A very good morning to all our viewers. We welcome you to the 10th National Seminar organized by the Engineers Welfare Forum of West Bengal Power Development Corporation Limited. The 10th seminar, which is being held in the blended format due to the ongoing pandemic and the SOPs which are in place, deals with a very, very key concern. The topic is climate commitment, phasing out of Indian coal-based power plants by renewables. West Bengal Power Development Corporation Limited is today being represented by the Engineers Welfare Forum, which is an ISO 9001-2015 organization, and it has since it was formed on the 25th of October 2010, it has been relentlessly working towards bettering the power environment in our state and in our country. It is formed of a visionary group of engineers of the West Bengal Power Development Corporation Limited, and they, as I said, they inexorably work towards a better future in the power sector. They have many activities. For instance, they constantly conduct upgrading exercises, practical and relevant training exercises. They are socially committed so that through their social event Prayas, every year they select 500 meritorious and yet economically challenged students, and they are not only felicitated but provided with school kits. They also run their own eatery, and a very important aspect of their activity is NEED, which is the National Energy Excellence Drive. Under this, they organize seminars and workshops throughout the year. This year, of course, we have selected for the topic of our 10th seminar one of the key issues which has become an emergency, let's say, activity globally, because as we all know that in the 26th UN Climate Change Conference, which was held in Glasgow last year, in fact, a few months before, from 31st October to 12th of November, there was a commitment by more than 40 countries of phasing out their coal-based power system. And hence, today we are going to talk about how we are planning in India to phase out our coal-based power plants and substitute them by renewables. So before we start the conference, before we welcome all our members virtually and physically, we would like to show you a documentary on the Engineers Welfare Forum.
Engineers Welfare Forum, an ISO 9001-2015 organization registered under West Bengal Society Registration Act 1961, is a premier consortium of engineers of the West Bengal Power Development Corporation Limited, the chief power generating company of the West Bengal, formed on 25th October 2010 by a visionary group of engineers of the WBPDCL. EWF, from the very first day of its inception, has dedicated itself in achieving collective welfare of the engineering fraternity. It operates through its local bodies based in Sagardighi Thermal Power Project, Santaldi Thermal Power Station, Bokreshwar Thermal Power Project, Kolaghat Thermal Power Station, Bandel Thermal Power Station, and the WBPDCL Corporate Office at Kolkata.
EWF has time and again come up with practical and relevant training courses for their engineers in the areas of power-related topics. Prayas, the flagship social event of the EWF, is an effort through which a total of 500 underprivileged but meritorious school students residing around WBPDCL's power stations are felicitated every year with school bags and year-long supply of study kits. an amount of rupees 50,000 had been donated to Chief Minister's Relief Fund for Nepal disaster. An amount of 2 lakh rupees had been donated to Ramakrishna Mission for COVID-19 pandemic relief work also. EWF also operates catering services at remote power stations through its self-functioning eateries. National seminars and workshops have been organized by EWF in every year under the program NEED, National Energy Excellence Drive, covering energy-related issues which may enrich the Indian power sector. So far, the following national seminars have been organized. Importance of water chemistry in thermal power plant, year 2011. Coal management for thermal power plant, year 2013. Emerging power scenario in India, year 2014. Renewable power scenario in India, year 2015. Competitive economics of Indian thermal power generation, year 2016. Survival of the greenest, a transition of India's power sector, year 2017. And one workshop, pollution control in coal-based thermal power plant, year 2017. India's mission on advanced ultra-supercritical technology for thermal power plant, year 2018, implementation of FGD in coal-based Indian thermal power plants, year 2019. Each year, the seminars have witnessed the congregation of minister-in-charges, policymakers, scientists, and other stalwarts to deliberate on issues related to the Indian power sector.
Power Genext, the flagship technical journal published on the day of the seminar, chronicles all the findings and analysis brought forth in the colloquium. EWF also brings out a biannual bulletin named Vision to showcase the various technical breakthroughs of our engineers at their respective plants. EWF is planning to establish technical libraries at all power plants township where technical journals, books, magazines, etc. will be made available for the members. EWF is helmed by an honorary board comprising vice chancellors, scientists and directors of reputed central universities, institutions and organizations like IIT Kharagpur, Jadavpur University, IIEST Shivpur, IIT ISM Dhanbad, CIMFR, Geological Survey of India, BHEL, NTPC, Power Grid and Indian Railways. This board is always available for any technical or administrative assistance that WBPDCL may require for its smooth functioning.
Engineers Welfare Forum maintains a dedicated interactive website to communicate with the world. Engineers Welfare Forum has come a long way from being a nascent body of few visionaries to a collaboration of almost 700 engineers of the WBPDCL. All along, EWF has nurtured the aspirations of its young engineers who in turn have pulled out WBPDCL from stasis to growth and prosperity. Engineers Welfare Forum of the WBPDCL pledges to continue this journey with similar grit and enthusiasm in the coming years.
That was about the Engineers Welfare Forum. And now we would move on to welcoming our most distinguished guests who are joining us virtually. We welcome Sri S. Suresh Kumar, IAS, Additional Chief Secretary, Power, Government of West Bengal. Sri S. Suresh Kumar, IAS, Additional Chief Secretary, Power, Government of West Bengal. We welcome you, sir. Dr. P.B. Salim, IAS Chairman and Managing Director, West Bengal Power Development Corporation Limited. Dr. Robi Chaudhary, Managing Director, Generation CESC Limited. Dr. Shaktipada Gon Chaudhary, Professor, IIEST, Shibpur. Dr. Shantipada Gon Chaudhary. We also have Snehashish Banerjee, GM, Operations Service, NTPC Limited. Dr. Rintu Banerjee, Professor, Head, Food and Agricultural Engineering Department, IIT Kharagpur. We have Engineer M.M. Dakarte, Chief Engineer, Renewable Technology and Integration, PA, Government of India. Engineer Shonak De, AVP BC India Group of the Jindal India Thermal Power Limited. We have Engineer Joy Chakraborty, Divisional Engineer, West Bengal Renewable Energy Development Authority. We have Mr. Vishal Kedia, CEO of Modern Bearing Agencies Authorized Industrial Distributor, Shefa India Limited. Mr. Abhiraj Kumar Shaw, Senior Project Manager, Technosoft Consultancy and Services. And Mr. Shubhro Basu Roy of Dantos. As we welcome our most distinguished speakers, participants, we would also like to do the lighting of the lamp. The lighting of the lamp, marking the commencement of our 10th National Seminar. Now, of course, the welcome address. The welcome address would be given by Sri Engineer Prashanta Sinha, Treasurer, CEC, EWF, West Bengal Power Development Corporation Limited. Mr. Prashanta Sinha.
Good morning, everybody present here in this virtual platform with us. On behalf of Engineers Welfare Forum, I welcome you all and extend my warm regards for your presence. Probably you have got some idea about Engineers Welfare Forum from the flashing session of this webinar. Today, we have with us Sri Suresh Kumar, IAS, Additional Chief Secretary, Power, Government of West Bengal, Dr. P.B. Selim, IAS, Chairman, Managing Director, WBPDCL, Sri Robi Chaudhary, MD, Generation, CESC, Dr. Shantipada Gon Chaudhary, Professor, IIEST, Shibpur, Sri Abhiraj Kumar Shaw, Senior Project Manager, Technosoft Consultancy Services, Sri Snehashish Banerjee, GM Operation, NTPC, Dr. Rintu Banerjee, Professor, Head, Food and Agricultural Engineering Department, IIT Kharagpur, Sri M.M. Dakate, Chief Engineer, Saunak De, AVP, BC Jindal Group, Sri Joy Chakraborty from WBREDA, and Vishal Kedia from Modern Engineering, Shubhra Basurai from Danfoss. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. I extend my warm gratitude for sparing your valuable time for this webinar. In this COVID situation, we had no other way but to go in for this webinar instead of a conventional seminar to comply social distancing. Coming to today's program, climate commitment, phasing out of Indian coal-based power plant by renewables. At present, we are very sensitive to environment. We have organized various programs, seminars, and webinars about green energy, clean fuel, renewable energy, and importance of such imbibing technology to counter emissions in the past years. In the 26th UN Climatic Change Conference of the Parties, COP26 Climate Summit in Glasgow during last November, more than 40 countries have agreed to phase out coal-fired power Signatories to the agreement have committed for phasing out coal in 2030 for major economies and 2040 for poor nations. India will have to achieve net zero greenhouse gas emission by the middle of this century. Net zero emissions means that all man-made greenhouse gas emissions must be removed from the atmosphere through reduction measures, thus reducing the Earth's net climate balance after removal via natural and artificial sink. To achieve such a target, India must phase out its coal-fired power plant by middle of this century and enhance the renewable sources for power generation. No doubt we are ready to welcome these, as it is a very good step to greener world. To reduce greenhouse gas emission and also to comply earlier Paris Agreement to limit global warming to 1.5 degrees centigrade, it's a Herculean technical challenge before us, along with lot of capital expenditure for sustenance of old thermal power station for these few years of their residual life. At the same time, switching smoothly to next generation renewable green power. For other environment-related projects, we are facing similar problem, though the gravity may be a bit lesser or greater, as the engineering and technology towards mass production cannot be a bereft of economy. Here we encounter the conflict between technical feasibility and economic viability, and it encompasses the topic we are supposed to discuss today. Today, we have with us eminent scientists, researchers, authorities, policymakers, and site persons to share their views on this important topic. I am sure their deliberation would enlighten us and help us find ways to deal with this situation. Thank you once again. Let's proceed.
Much. That was Engineer Prashanta Sinha, who actually talked about the main concern, which is the Herculean challenge that faces all the engineers as the coal-based power systems are gradually being phased out and the renewables are coming in. It is truly a challenge, but with our extraordinarily capable and skilled engineers, we are sure we are going to meet this challenge head on. We are sorry to say that Sri S. Suresh Kumar, IAS, who had to leave on an emergency today, so he will not be able to address us today, but he does send his best wishes. We have Dr. P.B. Salim with us today. Dr. P.B. Salim, IAS of the 2001 batch, has over the last 20 years, he has had many very, very interesting portfolios, many interesting assignments, both in West Bengal and Kerala. And he has received many accolades for his extraordinary work. To mention only a few, the British Chevening Scholarship for Masters in Globalization and Leadership at the London School of Economics, LSE, in 2010. This was received from the British government. He had received from the Kerala state government the E-Governance Award, the National Award for the Best District Election Officer. He had received the Best CEO Award, RSBI, in the year 2012. The Chief Minister of West Bengal had conferred on him an award for excellence in 2014. So we would now request Dr. P.B. Salim, who is now holding the charges of Secretary, Chief Minister's Office, Government of West Bengal, as also the Chairman and Managing Director of West Bengal Power Development Corporation Limited, for his address. Thank you.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Very good morning to all of you, all my colleagues. My friend from Engineers Welfare Forum, President Devapriya Mitra, Secretary Shoman Das, other colleagues. I could also see names of Ruby Chaudhary, my colleague from CESC, Gon Chaudhary, our expert in renewables, and many other experts. First of all, I would like to convey my regards and gratitude to the Engineers Welfare Forum for organizing such an event, which they have been organizing year after year. So all of us have been passing through this, pandemic, very difficult period. I must also convey my gratitude, my sincere thanks to each one of my colleagues, especially my engineering colleagues, for not just running our plants, but making a all-time record generation. I'm very happy to share this. Last year, in the last financial year, we have been able to produce the largest ever power generation from WBPDCL since its inception. We have also been able to make a record profit of 256 crore, which again is a 10 times increase over the previous years. And it gave me immense pleasure, immense happiness in sharing a part of that profit as incentives to all my colleagues. We have been able to give an incentive of 1 full month's salary to every single employee starting from the top to the bottom, including the contractual, including the part-time workers. I don't know when was the last time PDCL have been able to give all its employees a share of its profit, a share of its good work as incentive. But this year, it's a good fortune that we have been able to do that, and I'm hoping that the coming years also will continue with this tradition of making profit, improving our performance, and thereby sharing the profit with. I hope I'm audible to all of you.
Absolutely, sir. We can hear you perfectly.
So I'm hoping that we'll be able to continue this tradition which we have started this year of improving performance year after year, improving our profit year after year, improving and making our organization as an excellent model organization in the field of energy generation, power generation, not just in our country, but across the globe, and also sharing a part of our profit, our good work with all our employees. Because at the end of the day, what we have been able to produce, what we have been able to perform is only because of your work, the work of every one of you, the work of each one of you. Since the time I have taken over, I have been taking advice from every one of you. Many of you have given your suggestions, your feedback, your advice individually, collectively, through various fora, through various communications. And I must confess, I must tell you, many of those suggestions have been very useful in taking our organization, taking your organization to bigger heights, better heights. Because I believe at the end of the day, we being in the public sector undertaking, we have the brightest minds. We have the better minds, we have the better talents across the board. So there's no reason why we should not be performing better than most of the other competitors across the board. Now, you have performed, you have demonstrated through your performance that despite calamities, despite various hindrances, despite a pandemic which has shook the entire world, we have been able to produce much, much better than previous years. It's not that last year we performed. This year, this financial year, we have started by topping the rank of the power generation companies, GenCos in the country. The ranking by Power Ministry of Power, Government of India, for the GenCos both in the public sector and the private sector, our Bakreshwar thermal power plant was topping the list in the month of April. And from May to August, May, June, July, August, Sandaldi power plant was topping the list of all power generation companies, all power generation plants in the country. And even today, in the last month also, Sandaldi power plant is on the second position nationally, and Bakreshwar and Sagardagi plant are also within top 20 positions. So once again, thank you to every one of you. It's a matter of great pride for all of us at WBPDCL and all of us at the state government. You must be remembering that our Honorable Chief Minister has tweeted our victory, our success from our personal handle, and she has conveyed her gratitude, her congratulations to each and every one of us. And I'm sure her appreciation will make us, aim for much bigger success in the days and years to come. Now, I'll not take much of your time because we have experts to speak in this field, in this domain of phasing out coal-based thermal power plants and replacing it with a renewable sector. Of course, that's not a debate just not just in our state, in our country, but across the world. This is a very current and very crucial debate happening. Now, all of you must be knowing, because you are technical experts in the field. We had this 2015 Paris Agreement, followed by 2021 Glasgow Agreement, wherein various countries across the nation, whether they like it or not, they had to make commitments of going for phasing out or phasing down coal-based thermal power stations. Now, when we talk about phasing out or reducing carbon emission, achieving a net zero carbon status, it's easier said than done. I believe we have two ways or two methods by which to approach this subject. Number one, of course, is reducing number of thermal power stations using coal, or put a stop to constructing or coming up with additional thermal power station using coal. The other, of course, would be improving our technology or technological intervention by which we could reduce emissions by the existing thermal power plants. It's as simple as that. Either you stop construction new plants, and parallelly you improve your technology by which you clean up the air, clean up your emissions. Now, what is the scenario as on today? As you would appreciate, coal mining is nothing new. Coal mining is there since centuries, probably started by the Chinese, then improved by the Roman Empire, which has taken over by the colonial powers during 19th and 20th century. They have used it immensely for the Industrial Revolution across the world. They have benefited immensely. All the wealth, what we see today in Europe, in Western countries, is mostly thanks to the Industrial Revolution, which is mostly thanks to coal mining. Now, there's a moral question also. Now, the Western world, the developed countries are lecturing the other countries that no, you can't use coal. You stop using coal. Why? They have reached a position, they have reached a condition, they have reached a state wherein they can afford to do that. But majority of the world, majority of population, both in Asia and in Africa and in Latin American countries, we are dependent on coal and coal-based, industries, especially power generation. Now, phasing out or giving up coal and coal production or coal for power generation, we have to have alternatives. Why are we using coal? Obvious reason is it is the cheapest and easily available fuel around. One reason. And the second probable reason is that we have built up infrastructures, we have built up structures across the country for using this coal and making power. Now, if you have to stop using coal and coal-based power, we'll have two major issues. Number one, what are we going to do with the existing infrastructure? Just think of WBPDCL. We have a installed capacity around 4,700 megawatt. And we have adding another 660 megawatt supercritical at Sagadiki. So it's roughly 5,500, 5,400 megawatt of installed thermal power capacity. Now, what are we going to do with this? More, how are we going to handle the social impact of that? Because we have thousands and thousands of employees employed directly and indirectly with the sector. Not just with WPDCL, but the allied sector, the mining sector, the transportation, etc., etc., etc. So there are thousands and thousands of people who are making a living out of this sector. We have to think of them. We have to have a way out. We have to have a facing plan. Otherwise, things are very, very difficult. The other aspect is, using a newer technology, better technology to clean the air. Now, all of us and all of you must be aware, we have been, we are in the process of setting up a FGD, wet FGD and dry FGD as wherever it is possible to clean our emission gases. But those who are associated with the tendering process, those who are associated with the project sector would know the scarcity in getting technology, the scarcity in getting agencies, the scarcity in getting organization to set up these installations. Now, we have been trying to tender this for months and months together. We have not been successful. Why? Because there are hardly any player. In our country, such a huge country, there are hardly 2-3 agencies who are capable of putting up an FGD plant. And we are talking about putting up FGD in hundreds of thermal power stations across the country. Now, of course, we have to do that. There is no question about. I'm absolutely not, questioning the sanctity or questioning the logic of doing it. It has to be done. Unless, otherwise, if you don't do this, there's no escape route. For the humanity to survive, for the humanity to thrive, proceed, we have to reduce our emission. We have to control emission. We have to be aware. We have to be more sensible. Now, but at the same time, we have to have technologies available. We have to come up with technologies. We have to come up with process and procedures by which this is done in a fashion by which the entire country, the entire sector, the entire population doesn't suffer. That is also important. Now, as you would see in the last climate summit in Glasgow last year, this was signed by around 40 countries. But if you see details, you will see the major the players in the sector, like USA, like China, like India, like Indonesia, they have been, like Australia, they have shied away from signing it for the obvious reason. Of course, even US didn't sign for the obvious reason that the social, the economic, and the political impact, the political ramifications of the decision. But as a country, we have taken a very bold initiative by the announcement of the Honorable Prime Minister, wherein our Prime Minister has announced setting up of 500 gigawatts of renewable energy by 2030, which is probably the largest, if not, the biggest addition of renewables in the sector. The 500 gigawatt renewable will be, a huge addition to the existing roughly around 100 gigawatt renewable as of now. So if we I think if we achieve this 500 gigawatts of renewable, we will not need any additional thermal power-based thermal power stations. So I will conclude here. I will just, a thought of bringing up these points for discussion for greater debate during the course of the day. My very parting point is that, number one, we have no escape. We have to do it. But number two, this has to be in a well thought of fashion wherein none of us suffer. Neither our employees, nor our community, nor our country, nor the developing countries across the world should suffer. But there has to be a way, there has to be a solution, amicable way by which we embark on this. Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Dr. Salim. A very, very clear pathway was etched by Dr. Salim of what the future is going to look like in the context of the phasing out of the coal-based power system and, of course, integrating the renewables. We now have Mr. Robi Chaudhuri, Managing Director, CESC Generation and Haldia Energy Limited, West Bengal. He's the Director of Dhariwal Infrastructure Limited, Maharashtra, and in charge of the thermal power generating business plan India of the RP Sanjeev Goenka Group, which has a total capacity of 2,500 megawatts. So we are awaiting Mr. Robi Chaudhuri, and we would like his input on this key topic, and would, of course, we are looking forward to hearing about his experience and his strategies.
Thank you, madam. Thank you very much. I hope I am audible and also
Absolutely
visible. Thanks a lot. Let me first convey my slightly belated wish for the safe and slightly more joyful New Year 2022. We are passing through a very, very tough time, challenging times, not only from the point of view what the topic will definitely bring on the table to debate, but also in our social, in our everyday life. So let me wish all who have joined either physically or on the platform virtually. Secondly, I will convey my apology for not being able to present physically because of the protocol being maintained from our company not to attend any gatherings. So I really beg apology for that. With this, let me get into the today's program. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests. And after Mr. Salim, MD PDCL, I have hardly anything new points to bring on the table. My heartfelt thanks to the Engineers Welfare Forum of West Bengal Power Development Corporation Limited for giving me the opportunity to deliberate, discuss, and most burning issue of Indian power sector today, which is the life of coal-based thermal power plants in India, particularly in the backdrop of the recently concluded COP26. I am truly proud to be here to get a chance to put my views. Let me get into the topic straight away and try to set the perspective on my own way. See, what has happened in the COP26 is there are a couple of things has happened. One is, yes, every country has accepted that they will reduce, let me emphasize the word reduce, the use of coal. And perhaps in the history of last 30 years of United Nations Climate Summit, this is the first time where all countries accepted and agreed to reduce coal-based thermal power plants. At the same time, they all have agreed to take actions so that the temperature rise 1.5 degrees centigrade or below with respect to the pre-industrial level. These are the two things which has happened. There was some controversy, as Mr. Selim said. Yes, there was a controversy regarding the pact where all the countries to be signed regarding a particular phrase. What is that phrase? Phrase was whether coal-based thermal power plants will be phasing out or coal-based thermal power plants will be phasing down. The word was phasing out, and it was debated, fiercely debated by the countries like India, China, and United States. And at the end of the day, these phase out words has to be watered down and phase down what phrase was actually included. Therefore, ladies and gentlemen, my point is that in India, we have not decided a particular time by which coal-based thermal power plants will all be shut down. This is my takeaway from the COP26 common resolution. I am not telling that we are not going to lower it down, but I am telling there is no specific timeline which has been agreed upon. I hope many of you will agree that for a country like us, they must have the fair share of global carbon budget and should be entitled to responsibly use fossil fuel within its scope. I repeat, global carbon budget should have a fair share for the developing countries like us, and we also must be responsibly use fossil fuel to the extent possible. We may recall in 2025 in COP Paris, the number of United Nations agreed to consider that taking actions to combat climate change, the agenda taking actions to combat climate change is one of the 17 sustainable development goals with a target delivery of 2030. It is one of the major agenda of 17 goals. We have our own issues, ladies and gentlemen. Poverty reduction, improvement in healthcare, nutrition, access to clean water, access to sanitation, creating better employment are also necessary along with access to clean energy. Prioritization for a country like us is more complicated for policymakers to decide. So I'm again telling, I'm not opposing the infusion of renewable energy, but my only point is the debate is how fast, how quick, how rapid this change should be brought into the system. Therefore, for the developing countries like us, where energy is still scarce, expensive, and other social problems are still persisting and pressing, CO2 emission limit is one of the many competing objectives compared to developed nations where energy policy is exclusively viewed through the lens of climate change. I hope you will not misunderstand me. Therefore, India cannot and should not have the affordability of dump coal in just the jiffy. as it is the cheapest, and as coal is available as a resource which is the cheapest and in abundance domestically for fueling many of our power stations. I am sure that many of you will agree that countries like us will definitely have to take a pause, but not for a long, for a moment, and then get into the renewable power. Intermittency still remains an issue for the major renewables, which is also vulnerable to weather. Unlike West, India has comparatively smaller gas-fired and nuclear generation capacities. Why? Because the power from such plants are slightly or to some extent more costly. Hydel projects are costly and involve large displacements of forests and human habitats, besides being vulnerable to weather. So gas and nuclear is costly. Hydel has its own limitations. Storage technology still today is evolving and remains a costly option. Then there is only dependable option remains coal as on date. Again, I'm telling you as on date. The very recent, a couple of months back, when there is a surge of electricity demand, where electricity used to be sold per unit at a cost of 25 rupees, in exchange, they are all on a sudden, people have understood, and again ultimately knocked the door of coal-based thermal power plants to increase generation, because at the end of the day, we cannot afford to live in darkness. A couple of years back, Brookings India's one of the reports suggests that substantial societal payouts from the coal across its value chain. This says it employs an estimated 4 million people directly or indirectly. At the mining level, the government enjoys dividend payouts from Coal India Limited. Railway, which dominates transportation of coal, receives an extensive level of cross subsidy from coal. So we also cannot ignore a large amount of revenue by way of taxes and royalties and mining fees, which are amongst the highest in the world. So my humble point here is we have to transfer from coal-based to renewable, but with keeping all this agenda, all these points in mind, as Dr. Selim said in his previous speech. India's per capita energy consumption as on date is 1/3 of the global average. International energy agencies, IEA, estimated that India need to add a power system equal to the size of European Union. You have not heard me wrong. Equal to the size of European Union to meet the expected growth of electricity demand in the next 20 years. So this is the global perspective. We, being a member of the power situation of the country as a whole, power professional, we always try to keep the bigger picture in mind, as well as we have to take actions to make ourselves fit for the future so that our business sustainability, be it coal, be it renewable, is not jeopardized. Now I am coming from the bigger picture to an energy professional, what we should be doing, considering the big picture what I have tried to depict. In India, energy access, energy transition, and climate change. Access, transition, and climate change of energy is going to ultimately shape the energy landscape of the country. But whenever I do this, whenever the policymakers will try to do that, they will definitely try to keep the other three things also in mind. That is, it should be reliable, it should be affordable, and it should be sustainable. So the question is, for a transition time, we must make our policies, decision, plans, whatever you say, will be directed towards reliable, affordable, and sustainable kind of a thing. I'm not going into the statistics of what is the capacity, what is coal capacity, what is going to be happening in after 10 years from now. Everything can suggest, if we can have a lens, we can see that even the 19 electric power survey of CEA, even in the year of 2029-30, which is 10 years from now, they are telling, yes, India will grow more than double, because their estimation is roughly 800 odd gigawatt of capacity, out of which definitely coal will reduce its share from today's roughly 53% to it will be around roughly 40-45%. But as far as the energy is concerned, even that time, it will share an energy of 54% compared to renewable, which is solar plus wind, which is 31%. But please understand, today it is only 10 to 12% share of energy. From 12% to 30% means there is a 20% energy more in the system with increasing demand. So therefore, we have to understand that renewable will be coming. There is absolutely no doubt. There should not be any iota of doubt. Renewable has to come, and we all have to be ready to welcome it, because that is what is required for the coming future. Again, I'm going back to a little backward, telling that how rapidly, how fast, how quick. So this is in a nutshell. However, for getting ourselves ready for the show to accept, and the kind of power plants what we have today, how we will sustain for another 10, 15, 20 years, if given an opportunity to remain there in the system. That should be our own agenda going forward. It is absolutely correct that gradually coal-based power plants will be having less and less time of production. Indian government policies, regulations, all are pushing hard by way of norms, notifications to infuse renewable energy, and non-compliance to that will be subjected to penalty. Actions what government has taken, you can see in the COP Paris Agreement, there was a pledge which India took that 40% of its capacity will be from renewable by 2030. And kindly note that at the end of the year 2021 December, India has achieved that number of 40%. Therefore, ladies and gentlemen, please understand we are at the right path and we are not deviating from our commitments. Many of our targets in India are always getting delayed by years, if not decades. But this time, 40% capacity from renewable sources has been achieved 9 years before time. So we have a good future as far as the renewables are concerned.
Thank you so much. That was an extraordinary point that Engineer Robi Chaudhuri, Mr. Robi Chaudhuri had made, that we have met a target unusual for India almost a decade before the target was supposed to be met. So we are serious about infusing renewables, about integrating renewables. Thank you once again for this wonderfully clear, transparent presentation of the problem and the challenges that face us. And now we move on to one of the iconic advocates of renewable or alternative energy, Dr. Shanti Pada Chaudhuri. Dr. S.P. Chaudhuri, for almost the last 3 decades, have glorified government bodies and energy development institutions, academics, in his quest for advocating renewable energy, sustainable power, and he is, of course, a member of the advisory board of Bijli, Clean Energy for All projects. Dr. S.P. Chaudhuri is now awaiting us, and he would obviously be talking about how renewables have become inevitable and how they are going to be integrated in our power system. Dr. S.P. Chaudhuri.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I will be mostly speaking on promotion of solar energy, and it is possible to phase out coal, I must say, in future. And I am a strong advocate of solar energy. And in fact, when I started the solar energy program in the country, it was only watt level. Few watts we were installing in the field, and now we are all talking about gigawatt. So you can see that it is possible to switch over from watt to gigawatt. So solar energy or other renewable,
technical journalism.
The target fixed up by the government of India or Honorable Prime Minister, that is 500 gigawatt by 2030, is possible, provided we all take initiative, the proper regulation. I will come to that, and proper the policies are there. Now, one point: most of India's emission come from coal, the biggest source of electricity. To offset the emission, India will have to reduce its emission from the power sector. 65%, 60 to 65%, energy, electricity comes from coal-based thermal power plant. And the emission level, we are well aware. The emission level from the power sector and the transport sector is very high in India. And India is mostly dependent on coal-based thermal power station. But at the COP26 summit in Glasgow, India raised its climate target to increase the use of renewable energy, reduce carbon emission, and most notably, reach net zero emission by 2070. Now, let us see what is the potential of India. Now, we are telling we should switch over to renewable. Is it possible? Is it possible to switch over to renewable in India? Whether there is potential. Now, one estimate shows India has the potential to produce as much as 900 gigawatt of renewable energy from commercially exploitable sources. Much of it is from solar energy. So almost 700 gigawatt power we can produce from solar energy, which is quite significant in Indian context. Because India's power demand, if we see now, India's peak power demand hit 184 gigawatt at the present in the year 2021. An estimate suggests demand will rise to 295 gigawatt and by end of 2022 and 690 gigawatt by 2036. So it is very clear that India's renewable energy potential is quite adequate to cater the need of Indian total power. That is possible. And in the meantime, a lot of new sources, new renewable energy sources will also come in next 20 years time, and the future potential will be also harnessed. Now, if we see the Indian renewable energy, what we have done in India in the renewable energy sector. India's installed renewable energy has just crossed, you are probably aware, 100 gigawatt, and the country is on track to meet its 175 gigawatt target under the Paris Climate Accord 2022. In the Paris Climate Accord, we have committed that we will reduce our emission by 30%, by the year 2033. And based on that, we have fixed up our target that we should install 175 gigawatt of renewable energy sources. And now we have already achieved 100 gigawatt renewable energy sources. By 2022, we are supposed to achieve the 175 gigawatt target. The National Solar Mission, which is indicating that we must achieve 100 gigawatt of solar power, by the year 2022. If you just recollect the National Solar Mission, we really initiated the National Solar Mission. I was also part of the program in the year 2010 when it was announced by the Prime Minister that by the year 2022, India will install 20,000 megawatt of solar power in the country. That was the National Solar Mission. And it was in 2010. Subsequently, in 2015, the new government, they enhanced the solar power target from 20,000 gigawatt to 20,000 megawatt to 100,000 megawatt. That is 100 gigawatt. And we have already achieved almost 50,000 megawatt of solar power, and we are hopeful that we will achieve the target. We will achieve the target by the year end of 2022. Now, 100 gigawatt already we have achieved in the renewable energy sector, and 75 gigawatt we are to achieve. And if we look at the scenario now, 50 gigawatt of renewable energy is now under installation, and another 27 gigawatt had been tendered, putting the total renewable energy capacity at about 175 gigawatt. So why I am telling this? I am telling this because you see many people are telling that we are keeping renewable energy target as very ambitious target. But I am telling this is not ambitious because we are achieving. We have already achieved 100 gigawatt. We will achieve 175 gigawatt by the year 2022. It is possible. Now, if we come at the Glasgow summit, India raised its 2030 target. Prime Minister himself announced from 450 gigawatt to 500 gigawatt of renewable energy capacity. It is a huge task. All the states and public sector undertakings are to implement the program. How this 500 gigawatt? Now the point is, in order to achieve the net zero target, 500 gigawatt. And another point, worldwide, one sun, one world, one grid, the concept that has also been introduced. Now, all these things are very nice, very big target, very big, ambitious, all these targets we are fixing. But the point is how we achieve the target. That is very important. And we are not discussing about that. You see, if we want to discuss about that, then I should be very critical. My point is who will do the job? 500 gigawatt, our Prime Minister has announced. The country has announced 500 gigawatt of renewable power by the year 2030. So that is the country's commitment. So who will do this big task? This major task, who will do? Obviously, India as such cannot do that. The states, the public sector undertaking, And the public as such, by the small solar rooftop program and other thing, they can take really, they can participate in the program in a big way, and then only we can achieve the target of 500 megawatts, 500 gigawatt by the year 2030. Now, what is the situation in India now? My point is, as I have mentioned, India has already achieved 100 gigawatt of renewable power. Now, Karnataka in India is a leading state in the country with an installed solar power capacity of more than 5,000 megawatt, followed by Rajasthan and Gujarat. Now, NTPC also has executed a large number of solar projects in the country. Now, mainly, if you look at the solar power program in the country, there are two types of solar power programs. One is major land-based solar power program, maybe 100 megawatt, 500 megawatt, 400 megawatt, and solar park program. There are a lot of solar parks in the country where infrastructure is created by the government, and the investor, they put money and they are coming up, and the big solar park, maybe 1,000 megawatt, maybe 1,500 megawatt solar parks are also coming up in the country. That is one way we are doing the job. That is one way. And other one is the public participation in the program by going for rooftop solar power plant, which is also a major, very popular program in the country. Now, if we look at the the position of our state, West Bengal, as I have mentioned, all the states and public sector undertaking, they have to take initiative really to set up this 500 gigawatt of power plant. And Government of India, I'm sure they will allocate to the various states that you have to do this, you have to do this, you have to do this. This is your target, this is your target, this is the target of the public sector undertaking, and this is the target of state public sector undertaking. All this target will be fixed up. Now, my point is, yes, the target will be fixed up, but who will achieve the target? Now, if we come at I'm really critical at this point. If we look at the West Bengal scenario, whereas I mentioned the Karnataka has already achieved more than 5,000 megawatt of solar power. Now, look at the state of West Bengal, whose target was almost 2,000 megawatt. Out of that 100,000 megawatt of solar power, it was fixed up by 2015. In the year 2015, it was fixed up. And now, out of that 2,000 megawatt, later it was fixed up at 1,000 megawatt, and we have so far achieved little bit more than 100 megawatt of solar power in the state. So the state which started the solar energy program long back in the country, Sundarban story everybody knows, and the first solar power plant, grid connected megawatt scale solar power plant in the country, I'm telling in the country, it was installed in the Asansol, Jamuria, 2 megawatt solar power plant, which was connected to the grid, and it was a big news at that time that a megawatt scale solar power plant has come up in the country, 2 megawatt solar power plant, it has come up in the country. But after that, the state like Karnataka, Rajasthan, Gujarat, Madhya Pradesh, Maharashtra, they have come up with solar power plant installed capacity much bigger than the state of West Bengal. Even the state like Odisha, the Jharkhand, and even the state like Haryana, their achievement, if we look at, we will see the solar power plant installed capacity is much more than West Bengal. Why it is like this? According to my analysis, West Bengal has a lot of potential for solar power generation. A lot of potential is there. And West Bengal has also the competent people, the industries, there are a number of industries in the state of West Bengal who can really come up with solar power plant. But the problem here is there is no policy for the lucrative, I should say lucrative policy for the state of West Bengal, which is the utmost, which is the real task of the state now. The government should come up with a proper policy which is very lucrative for the state, for the distribution, for the investor, so that they really come up with this type of solar power plant install capacity, solar power plant installation. So that solar power policy of the state, that is first point. the webinar organizer, I should request, if you make a recommendation, first point you should mention that the state of West Bengal, which has no solar power policy at present, it should have a very good solar power policy, so that really with the target of the country 500 gigawatt, at least if 2000 megawatt or 3000 megawatt target we fix up by the year 2030, then at least we should be able to achieve that. Proper policy should be there. So that is number one. Number two, the rooftop solar power plant, which was coming up in the state of West Bengal, in a good number of people, the small industries, they were also putting up, institutions, they were also putting up. And at that time, the net metering facilities, that net metering, actually net metering, as you know, whatever you consume, and whatever you produce. So whatever you produce, it will be subtracted from your consumption and you will be net metered. So this is more or less a lucrative policy, and it was there by the regulator, it was there. Now, suddenly I have seen that regulators, they have announced the net metering policy as a gross metering policy, and only up to 5 kilowatt, net metering policy is there. So it is totally discouraging. The net metering policy, unless it is there for the industries who will be putting up 100 kilowatt or 200 kilowatt or 1 megawatt of solar power, or the consumers. If in my house I put up a 10 kilowatt solar power plant and then I get the net metered facilities, then I will be going for that type of thing. So that net metering facilities, that is not there now. It has been converted into a gross metering facilities, which is totally discouraging for the promotion of solar energy in the state. So my request will be again to review the regulation of rooftop solar power plant in the state, so that the rooftop solar power plant, the potential of rooftop solar power plant in this state is more than 600 megawatt. We have not yet achieved 10 megawatt of rooftop solar power plant. Hardly 10 to 12 megawatt we have achieved. So think about the potential. So that potential, if we want to achieve, we must have a lucrative rooftop solar power policy and also regulation. So that should be the second point, which in the recommendation the organizer should mention, that unless we go for proper and lucrative rooftop solar power policy, the target, if we fix up the target, doesn't matter. I know the coal sector of West Bengal is very, very influential, and the coal sector is going ahead with the program. But I am sure ultimately coal will be phased out in the country by the regulation from the international body. There will be a pressure from the national body, there will be pressure, and gradually coal will be phased out. And the third point, which is very important, I should mention, that is, in West Bengal, you will not find any private sector investing in the solar energy program, large-scale solar energy program. Why? Because the distribution company, the DISCOM of West Bengal, they have their RPO obligation, they have their SP obligation, but they don't call for tender. Competitive bidding is not there. They are only putting up. State distribution company, they put up maybe 10 megawatt or 5 megawatt solar power plant. They don't have resources. They don't have resources. Where money they will get? Where from they will get money? So they can't achieve 100 megawatt or 200 megawatt. If we want to put up 500 megawatts, 1000 megawatt of solar power plant, the private investment should come. And in order to get the private investment, the competitive bidding should be there, and based on that, the private investor should be rest assured that their power, whatever investment they are going to make, they are going to recover that investment by selling of solar electricity to the distribution company. And in West Bengal, that is not there. That part, the entire country, if you look at that 50,000 megawatt of solar power in the country, out of that 95% is from the private sector who are producing solar power and selling into the grid. But in West Bengal, we don't have that type of thing. So that type of culture, that investment from the private sector, the distribution company should call for competitive bidding. I'm not telling give them higher rate. I'm telling it should be a competitive bidding, and I'm sure it will be very low, very cheap now, and purchase solar power from the investor, from the private investor. Then only, these 3 points, the organizer, if they record it, if they put it in the in writing and approach the government, the regulator, and also the distribution companies, that these are the points. These are the points. If we can follow, if we have a good policy on these points, then the state of West Bengal will be number one, a lead state in the country, and they will be able to achieve the target, whatever is fixed up. Only by discussion, only by webinar or seminar, we can't achieve the target. The practical point is we must have a good policy, we must have good regulation, then only we will be able to achieve the target. So my point will be, if we really want to phase out coal-based thermal power plant in future to achieve the target of the country, to achieve the net zero target of the country, then we must have proper policy. We should go ahead with the lucrative policy, and that should be announced very shortly, not that it will be, again, it will take 4 years or 5 years time, and then only we'll be able to achieve the target of phasing out of coal or phasing down of coal slowly. I'm not telling solar energy will come tomorrow. Solar energy will also take over in next 20 years or 30 years of time. So gradually we should be ready. Unless we are ready, we will be not a visionary, we'll be not treated as a visionary. We must be our private, our power generation company like PDCL, like distribution company like WBPDCL or CSC and other people, they should have a vision that yes, coal will be phased out in future, and the state of West Bengal should take a lead, and we should have a good policy, and gradually we start the action so that from tomorrow itself, we start phasing out of coal gradually, and let there be a solar West Bengal for the future generation. Let us keep a livable West Bengal for the future generation with less pollution and really green environment, clean environment. So that is my short deliberation. I thank the all the you see, one more point just before I forget. Prime Minister has already announced about one sun, one world, and one grid. So that is, international grid, will be there. I should mention in this incidentally that since the generations of renewable energy in West Bengal is very less, 100 megawatt, close to 100 megawatt. So West Bengal has been, bypassed for the green corridor. The recently green corridor has been declared by Government of India, which will be constructed by 12,000 crore investment will be there. And since West Bengal generation of green energy is less, so West Bengal has been bypassed. So this type of things will happen in future. We can't blame others because we don't have. That's why we are not getting. We must be very clear in our, really vision and mission. We should be very clear that we should go for that. We should have a green corridor, and we should be able to generate electricity. And as I was mentioning, the concept of one world, one sun, and one grid is coming up, through which the international level, regional level, the grid will be there, and there will be a lot of investment, a lot of research activities worldwide. So West Bengal should also be part of that major task, major activity, the one sun, one world, and one grid activity. You see, the state of West Bengal should take part, and I'm sure our engineers will will do research on that, and also the distribution companies, they will take part in that type of great initiative. So once again, I thank the organizer for giving me opportunity to speak here.
Thank you so much, Dr. S.P. Ganjodhuri. As usual, that was powerful and very, very practical advocacy for renewables, particularly solar energy. Thank you so much for making things so very clear as you usually do. So right now, we are going to have the release of our technical journal, which is called Power Gen XT. The volume 10 would be released. And this technical journal contains all the key issues, all the takeaways from our seminars. So we go on to the release. Power Gen XT Volume 10 is formally released. We are indeed very, very grateful to our sponsors, CESC Limited, WBPDCL, WBPDCL, Scheffler India Limited, Technosoft Consultancy and Services. Thank you so much, all of you, for making this particular 10th seminar of ours in the blended format possible. So we'll just see, take a few moments and see their activities. All right, we move on to our commercial section, in which we would have PowerPoint presentations from various organizations. We will start off with Mr. Vishal Kedia, who is the CEO of Modern Bearing Agencies, and they are the authorized industrial distributor of Scheffler India Limited. So Mr. Vishal Kedia would now have a PowerPoint presentation.
Yeah, so am I audible?
Absolutely audible,
Yeah,
sir.
perfect. Just let me share. Yeah, so good morning, everyone. I, Vishal Kedia, CEO Modern Bearings, authorized industrial distribution partner, would like to welcome each and every one of you on behalf of our principals, Scheffler India Limited, to this 10th national seminar organized by the Engineers Welfare Forum. So starting with my presentation, I'll first tell you about the company's profile a bit and about the products, and then I'll end it with the company's targets towards climate commitment and sustainability. So yeah, starting with the Scheffler Group, the Scheffler is a leading global supplier to the automotive and the industrial sectors. It has a significant presence in India with the majorly of 3 major brands. That you can see. One is FAG, second is ENA, and third is Luke. And the company has around 3,000 plus customer bases in India, with more than 9 sales office and around a compound annual growth of 10.6% in India. Yeah, the company has 4 plants in India, 2 in Vadodara, 1 in Pune, and 1 in Tamil Nadu. The manufacturing plant in Vadodara, it was set up in 1964, and it produces a vast range of ball bearings, cylindrical ball bearings, spherical roller ball bearings, and wheel bearings, and it is sold under the brand name FAG. The second plant, which is also in Vadodara in Savli, produces next generation deep groove ball bearings, large size roller bearings, and all are sold under the same brand name FAG. The third plant, which is in Pune, right, it manufactures engine and transmission components for front accessory drive systems, chain drive systems, and a large range of needle roller bearings. And the fourth plant, which is in Tamil Nadu, Hosur, also manufactures clutch and clutch plate systems of light commercial vehicles and heavy commercial vehicles. The company has 2 R&D centers in India right now and is planning to expand more in the coming years. The Scheffler has around 10,000 plus distribution points in both of its industrial and automotive segment. As you can see, in all over India, be it north, south, east, and west. They are evenly distributed everywhere. We as Modern Group, we have offices in West Bengal and Odisha right now with our representatives all over Eastern region, catering to the demands of all our industries which are present in our region. Scheffler Group currently has many customers here. The group has caters to different industrial segments like power, transmission, aerospace, wind, fluid, railways. The company is planning to expand more in different industries. So there are two ranges of the company. First one is the industrial segment and second one is the automotive segment. The industrial division basically starts with the smallest ball bearing with 1 mm diameter and goes to around 12,000 mm diameter bearings, and many bearings are made on special request by the company. The more products that are available with the brand and the company are like housings, drives, sleeves. The company has around more than 40,000 items in its catalog, and there are many more products which I'll further tell you about it. The company also has its FAGs, induction heaters, which are used by many of the industries right now. And it has also come out with the grease, which is the extra 3 grease. The company has also this time introduced a new product called Optime. Optime is basically a product which you can install in your the basic it you can install it in the machinery. You can just predict the data. So it's a plug, play, and predict, and it's a high scale monitoring device used. And company's automotive range is basically has, as I told you in the previous slides, ENA, which covers engine and transmission components, Luke, which covers components and clutch transmission systems, and FAG, as the well-known brand you know, covers wheel modules, transmission bearings in all the automotive ranges. Yeah, so the new X Life has started by the company. The X Life is basically a new mark on the bearings, and it is a new type of bearings with X Life means extra life. So the benefits that the company is giving you through these bearings are that it can support high load, and it can increase performance capacity, increase energy efficiency, extend the maintenance intervals of the machines, and increase productivity and reliability of the drives. In the PPT, you can see the normal surface bearings, the diagram, the normal tension in the normal surface bearings, and with the X Life bearings by Scheffler. Yeah, so we have a balanced customer base of in both automotive and industrial. These are just some of our customers that we can put in the slide. As you can see, we cater to majorly all the automotive segments and all the major automotive industries and companies in India. And be it industrial, we also cater to many of the industries, like we can see JSW, be it NTPC, Vizag Steel. I just can't name anymore. There are so many of them. And so coming to the today's topic, basically, which is climate commitment and sustainability towards, we Scheffler as supply products and technologies that make mobility and industrial equipments more eco-friendly and efficient. As a leading technology company, we are also committed to creating for our own processes as energy efficient, eco-friendly, and resource conserving as possible. One of the major steps that a company has taken and right now is making their own production facility worldwide carbon neutral by 2030. That is a big step that company is looking forward to complete it by 2030. The Carbon Disclosure Project has given the company A rating right now, as you can see in the PPT. There are many more targets towards sustainability and climate commitment that a company is going to take and is taking right now. Some of them are like they are going to do it 100% purchased power from renewable sources by 2024 and 20% of the reduction of freshwater supply by 2030. So yeah, I just want to end my presentation by saying last few words, like Scheffler is actively engaged in innovating and shaping the global pace of change with innovative technologies, products, services for CO2 efficient drives, electric mobility, industry 4.0, digitalization, and renewable energies. the company is a reliable partner for making motion mobility more efficient, intelligent, and sustainable. Yeah. So thank you.
Thank you.
So
Thank you
much.
so much. Thank you, Mr. Kedia.
Yeah.
And we now move on to the next power presentations by Mr. Abhiraj Kumar Shao, Senior Project Manager, Technosoft Consultancy and Services, as also by Mr. Shubhro Basu Roy from Danfoss. We look forward.
Good morning, everyone. Myself, Abhiraj from Technosoft. From Danfoss, Mr. Shubhro Basu will be giving the presentation on this particular topic. Shubhro sir, you can proceed.
Yeah, good morning, everybody. Hopefully my screen is visible.
Yes, it is.
Thank you, first of all, WBPDCL for giving us this opportunity to present on this forum. Basically, we are discussing on energy generation, whether it is coal-based or it should be renewable, and we are discussing on a very good platform here. But we know that it cannot happen in a day. Like tomorrow, we cannot put up a complete carbon neutrality world. So it has to be in a phased manner. But in this phased manner, as we come from a drives community, a variable frequency drives community, how we can contribute in this world is something what we are going to discuss here. Basically, if we can do the much more on the energy efficiency side of the complete solution, then probably, the carbon neutrality, what we are looking for is something which we can achieve faster. If you know that by 2030, there has been a resolution that things will have to be carbon neutrality by 1 gigaton emission annually by 2030. That is the target which is going on. And that's what the 50% reduction in energy is getting used by 2030. And 50% less carbon dioxide emission actually energy is getting used. So there are various ways of doing it. If you see from a drives community, we can say that 20% of the world's energy consumption is basically the electrical energy, and 50% of the electrical energy is used by the electrical motors. So today, almost 75% of the AC drives are used basically on applications like pumps, fans, and compressors. And tomorrow, almost AC drives have the potential to save 8% of the global electricity consumption by 2040. So we have a commitment and passion to do that on the same ground. Now, if you see in a power plant, there are various applications. I'll first go on maybe the coal handling areas, where you have material handling applications like cranes, conveyors, stacker reclaimers, and you have various ways of changing it from having a better energy efficiency things in this. So if you use a variable frequency drive in this, definitely you will have a lot of energy efficiency, which will not only give a longer life, but also your use of energy will definitely come down in this. In other applications, like in boiler feed pump areas, the FGD areas, the ash handling, the slurry pumps areas, also where there are fan pumps and blowers, compressors are used, the variable frequency drive will definitely play a very major role, and it will save a lot of energy. Hence, we are actually trying to give a more energy efficiency environment so that the use of coal is less. Obviously, we are transiting from coal-based to the renewable energy based, but usage of coal, if we can reduce, definitely we are trying to achieve a more better area. Now, I'll give you some basic example how drives can be used in certain areas. Currently, in a normal condition, if you see, we are using the drives or we are using the motors in various speed regulation areas, and in certain times the coolant pumps are also getting used. And when there is a power failure in that system, basically we try to use a diesel generator. So again, it's something which is having a more pollution and something like which is creating challenges. Instead of this, if you can go with the energy storage system, a battery backup system in that area, and you can size the battery based on the requirement on how much it has to run in case of a power failure, then this is something which will contribute more. The transition is already there. People are already using it. I'll just go a bit technical into this. Basically, this is a system in normal condition. You can see the power is going and feeding the motors, and it is also parallelly charging the battery. And in case there's a power failure, there is a bumpless changeover where the battery is feeding the motor. You don't need to manually change it over. It's a bumpless changeover. The process does not stop. So this is something which is already available, and it is already getting used in various industries. Mostly in steel industries, people are very much used. If there is something which, as a drives fraternity, we can help on this based on your application, we are ready to help on this. Now, let us take it on a wider concept. So, in a wider concept, Danfoss is based out of Chennai. It's a Danish company, and it's the first India's first LEED Platinum campus, which is available, and it uses 90%. 1600 kilowatt is the power consumption, and 90% is green energy. That's solar and wind energy is what they're using within its campus. So 1 megawatt power solar generation is used, almost 333 kilowatt hour generation per day is used. But what happens in weekends, it does not have this power use, so it gets switched off. So 1100 units gets wasted. That's what was happening. But now with this grid converter, which I showed earlier, you can see the pictures below. It's a 250 kilowatt hour grid converter with a battery energy storage system. This is already been installed under commissioning, and this will actually help to store the energy for the weekends on Saturdays and Sundays. And this can be used for a peak demand or even for a short time of power use. So you are actually saving a lot of energy, even though you are in a renewable space. So that is again one of the things which is coming up. I think in Europe, this is very much in used. India, this is one of the first type, and we are putting it in our protocol. So just to give, this is the basic block diagram. I won't go in details. There's a time scarcity, and then you can just plug into any of the feeders in the PCCs and use this. You can see this is the existing PCC or MCC, and then you can plug it with any of the feeders. It's a small block with a container, and then you can use it. Based on the total power, you can use this. And you can see it can be used in transmission, distribution, and also behind the meters. And it can be used in various areas, whether it is on the HT side of 400 kV, 110 kV, or even in 415 volts. So wherever you want, you can use it based on paralleling the modules and paralleling the batteries. And this is how we are trying to give a solution for a better carbon neutrality moving forward. Apart from that, what we see is also this, when we talk about variable frequency drives, the electronic components has to be mounted inside on a non-dusty room. But then Danfoss has come up with this solution of IP66 modules, which can be placed outside the environment in an open space, so that it can be used without any air conditioning, without any enclosed features. These are some of the pictures, live pictures, which is available. So anytime you don't need to be spend money more on a room or air conditioning, you can put it outside near to the equipment. So basically, Danfoss is a very strong company. The figures of 2020 was 5.8 billion euro group. And even in this pandemic, the growth has come down obviously by 6%, but that is also comparatively better to the other companies. And as a drives, we have this division. We are working on solar, we are partnering SMA, we are also working on variable frequency drives and also on automotive sector on the power components, power modules, the electrical vehicles. And we are 1,000 partner companies globally. And in India, we are also there from Chennai. And in this region, we have Technosoft here, who are working as a solution provider with Danfoss SC drives. They have a very strong engineering expertise and in-house panel manufacturing facilities and a very strong service support in this region. A complete value chain available from Kolkata. So anytime, any questions is there, please reach us on this email IDs and contact details, and we are happy to support you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Mr. Shubhra Basurai. And now we move on to the technical session. There would be 5 speakers. The bad news is that we are more than 50 minutes behind schedule. So this is a very ardent request to all the speakers to kindly keep within their time and, if possible, make their points in lesser time than has been given to them. We start off with Mr. Snehesh Banerjee. Snehesh Banerjee has been with NTPC for the last 36 years. His specialization is in operation, balance of plant energy efficiency and commercial function of thermal power plants. His present assignment is very, very important and pertinent to today's key topic. This is to drive flexibilization activities in NTPC in view of the large-scale integration of renewable energy, and he is doing that as the General Manager at Operation Services, Scope Complex, New Delhi. Over to Mr. Snehesh Banerjee.
Thank you, ma'am. Am I audible, ma'am?
Yes, clearly audible.
Thank you. So the topic is the climate commitment, phasing out of coal-based units with renewables. The previous speakers, Mr. Ravi Chaudhary of CSC and Ganapati Chaudhary, he had set a right perspective of the background for this particular topic. And phasing out may not be the right term. It should be phasing down of coal-based units. In this presentation, I will touch upon the doables of coal-based thermal units in view of these large-scale integrations of renewables. And I will touch what should be our process, how we should approach it, and how we should acclimatize it mentally, and we have to absorb the necessity of doing it, the flexible way of operating our plants. Now, if we see the climate commitment, our previous speakers have touched upon, but I just touch upon these points. India's commitment in COP26 was India will bring its non-fossil energy capacity to 500 gigawatt. Now it is 104 gigawatt. It's a huge jump. India will bring its economy's carbon intensity down to 45% by 2030. Very, very ambitious. India will fulfill 50% of its energy requirement through renewable energy by 2030. And the last but not the least, the most important, net zero emission by 2070. So this is the background. And what we have achieved so far, we have achieved 40% of installed electricity capacity from non-fossil fuel. It is also very important, 104 plus hydel capacity. Taken together at around 150 gigawatt plus, that is the capacity what we have already installed. Now, if we see the two charts, in 2021, 31st December, we have a capacity of 392,017 megawatt of plant all over India, where 53.4% is coal, and solar and hydro and wind together coming around 40%. So that is the point. The renewable energy, we consider hydro also into it. And if we see the right side, the 2930, in a 10 years period, we'll have a total capacity, projected capacity, 817,254 megawatt, and out of which coal will be around 32.7% odd, and solar and wind will take a huge chunk. So that is the target. So the challenge is solar and wind is highly unpredictable and sort of intermittent nature of power source. So we cannot depend entirely on the solar and wind unless and until there are some energy storage technology innovations will take place in future. So we have to have some other mechanism of power sources. That may be coal, that may be gas, that may be other way, say biomass and others. So that is the situations right now. But in Indian context, as because we do not have sufficient capacity of hydro and gas is not available, so we are heavily dependent on coal, and we will depend on coal in future time also. So this is a particular classical chart. It is given in our recommendations given by a Central Electricity Authority report. where it is shown that on a given sunny day in the month of, say, July, August, where the RE power is at its peak, the both wind and solar generally generates maximum during that rainy season. Now, on a particular sunny day, if the solar power is at its peak, then the orange line, what it is shown in the in between, which will reach at peak in the 12 hours in the during noon, and during that period we have to keep our coal generation, which is shown in a black curve, we have to keep it down, so to manage our total energy demand. So the point is, maybe in the 7 o'clock in the morning, we have to reduce our coal generations, ramp it down, and keep it as minimum as possible during 12 or 13 in the noon time. Again, we have to ramp it up. So that is the classical dark curve. And given that particular curve in mind, what are the doables for coal plants? We have to ramp it down and again ramp it up. We have to make the unit run at a lower minimum load, and in the process, some of the plants having a lower capacity, maybe 150 megawatt and less, some of the older plants, old inefficient plants, are to be retired or subjected to two-shift operations. And third component is essential, the provision of at least 55% technical minimum load. Okay, even now, our central generating stations, ISGS stations, they are operating at 55%, but still some of our state GENCOs are operating at a higher percentage of loading factor, so that these challenges will be further intensified if they do not come down. So that is the point CA had mentioned in the report. Now, to adapt to these situations, to acclimatize with the flexibilizations process, what we have done so far in NTPC, that we have taken a trial operations in different units so that our people are well trained, mentally adapted to this flexibilization process in front some of our international experts like German experts, GE, our USAID, all those agencies. In front of those agencies and experts, we have taken some of the trial operations for minimum loading operations and with the higher ramping. Even we have taken the support of J Coal in case of our Vindhyachal unit. So we have taken a series of demo sort of trial operations in front of those expert associates. And from that, we have learned a lot. And EPRI USA, that is, they are also pioneer in sort of a consultant sort of agencies where they have given us a sort of benchmarking studies where we have identified the gap and intended O&M practices required to follow because of these flexible operations. So these are some of the studies we have done. And from those studies, what we have observed that during these minimum loading or flexible operations, we can face the challenges of the flame stability, because when the unit will run at, say, 40% load, then with the coal conditions, the coal what we are firing in Indian conditions with the lower GCV and sometimes very low VM coal, the combustions and flame stability will be a great challenge. That is the first challenge. The second challenge is when the units are running at lower load, the steam flow through the boiler will be less. It can be subjected to high heat load. And as a result of that, the boiler tip failure can occur. When the units are run at a lower load, the draft power will be less. As a result, there may be a chances of ash depositions in the boiler pressure parts areas. And taking all those things in mind, there will be a crisis of process control. The process control with respect to the temperature variations, with respect to parameter variations, metal temperature variations. So those are to be controlled. And the variations of coal quality. Sometimes we are facing the challenge that the coal what we are receiving are varying in nature. And finally, the thermal fatigue. So these are the challenges we have faced during that trial operations. And from that, if we convert it into some of the parameter terms, then I am a little bit technical, but please excuse me, because it is the WPDCL, the same generator fraternity I am talking with. So that is why I am touching those points in to some extent greater details. The excessive fluctuations in steam temperatures, the high drum level swings during ramping, the flame disturbance during ramping and minimum load operations, occasional furnace pressurizations, sometimes the stalling of PFNs, and low boiler flue gas exit temperatures, which can lead to acid corrosion if it is maintained like that. So these are some of the critical areas we will face when we run the units and minimum load. Now, just giving you some overall perspective. This is a particular study taken in Moda, where when the units are running with the 500 megawatt units running at 6 mills operations, the flame scanners positions are like that. But when we come down to 40% load, we cannot run the unit at 6 mills, of course. We come down to 44 mills, even below that, 3 mills. Now we have run with the 3 mill conditions, the flame will be shown like that. Though there are some reduction in flame intensity, and this is a huge challenge. Then in Talcher, we have taken the trial operations, where we have observed that the main steam and HRH steam temperature, the fluctuations is huge. It should not be more than say 8 to 10, 12 degrees centigrade, but it is more than 20, 25 degrees centigrade. And during that ramping and lower load operations, our metal temperature are also crossing the limits. So these are the areas where we have to take control. Drum level fluctuations in the case of 500 megawatt units, the TDBAP recirculation valves, the on-off type is very difficult to handle when the units are running at a lower load. Sometimes it is closed, and as a result, there may be huge fluctuations. And of course, at a lower load, the primary air fan can lead to a situations where the fan can be stalled. So these are some of the critical aspects what we have observed during the that particular trial operations. And finally, the solutions what we can think for to eliminate all those situations are some of the control which is predictive type. The main steam temperature control in classically whatever available in our units are basically reactive type. That means when the temperature goes high or goes down, then only it is controlling through spray or other mechanisms. But the predictive steam temperature, it will predict sort of machine learning applications will be utilized, and based on the previous trends of temperature rise, it will control proactively. So that sort of advanced process control is to be introduced to control those steam temperatures. Similarly, the reheat temperature also. The installations of modulating type recirculation valves are also being deployed in BAP to avoid that drum level fluctuations. The milling system is very, very critical. As we have explained, the type of coal we are handling, the variations of coal, and the number of milling operations are to be optimized, because of otherwise there will be a skewed primary air to secondary air ratios, and that will create a problem in combustions. But to eliminate that, what we can do, we have a solutions like automations of milling and mill schedulers. That means the mill scheduler will decide in which mill how much coal is to be loaded based on the different parameters, combustion parameters inside the furnace, and accordingly run those mills. So that is the mill schedulers, what we have, that may be the best solutions to deal with those situations. Similarly, the flue gas temperature control, the boiler exit temperature control, and where the SCAF can be handy. So when we come down from say full load, 500 megawatt full load to technical minimum load, say at a 40% level, 200 megawatt, at a ramp rate of 1%, then if we can have a automated start, stop, ID, FD, PA, and milling automations, then we can have a seamless operations, because the human interventions or human interventions during those process will definitely jeopardize the entire process systems. And another point I'd like to mention here, that we are installing boiler fatigue monitoring and equivalent operating hours in turbine to see how this ramping and lower minimum load are affecting our plant life. So these are some of the solutions, and based on our trial operations. And in Simhadri also, we are utilizing some of the advanced process control, where the applications are limited only with respect to temperature, with respect to the unit load response optimizations and combustion optimizations. So they are basically through process control we are trying to manage at Simhadri. And this is a flow chart I would like to tell before you all as a generator what are the three basic essential elements involved. The first is people, because we have to adapt to the situations. The first and foremost is creating mindset, accepting the fact that we have to come down to a bare minimum load, accepting the fact that we have to run the unit for a 500 megawatt unit with 3 mill operations. So that is a change in mindset. And for that, what is required is the exposure, the trial operations, and training to the people. The second, the process. The most and important fundamental aspects of dealing with this situation is the process control, advanced process control, which is to some extent proactive type control. And third, the technology, maybe new technology like automations of mill schedulers, some other engineering applications. When we conceive during the design stage, there may be changes in technological interventions may also be very much handy. So these are three different criteria through which we can control the flexible operations in our thermal plants. Now, at the end, I would like to conclude by 4 key points. The first point is coal-based units are to be flexibilized. There is no other points. Our previous speakers also told categorically. What are those? The minimum load may be 40%, high ramp rate, and frequent startup. So these are the 3 essential elements of flexibilizations. The third is there will be cost associated with flexibilizations. The part load degradations, when you run the unit at lower load, our coal consumption will be more and there will be degradations. Our startup cost because of frequent startup and shutdown, then life consumption cost due to this flexing. And all those costs are to be adequately compensated to the generators. Otherwise, a generator cannot go for these flexible operations. So the third step is plan and prepare. Prepare for the competency development, introduce advanced process control and new technology interventions to minimize the life consumptions. The life will be consumed because of variations in temperature, because of fatigue and creep associated with those operations. Then last but not the least, the other speakers had also categorically told that at least for another 2 to 3 decades, the coal units will stay here. This is for sure. So we have to adopt it, we have to welcome it, and we have to acclimatize it for the better flexibilizations of coal-based unit to accommodate larger and larger integrations of renewables. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Mr. Banerjee. That was a very, very clinical ground level analysis of the challenges and more importantly, the solutions thereof. We would now move on to Professor Rintu Banerjee, who's a redoubtable name in biofuel, and she is the head of the Agricultural and Food Engineering Department and Center for Rural Development and Innovative Sustainable Technology. She is the ex-MNRE chair professor and is acknowledged as a leading enzymologist working majorly in the area of food fermentation and bioenergy. Over to Professor Rintu Banerjee. And once again, we would request all of you to kindly minimize your presentation as much as possible. There are questions which are coming in, and the people who are asking the questions can please indicate the person they want the answer from. So we need to keep some time for that, and we are really behind schedule. Over to Professor Rintu Banerjee.
So good afternoon to all of you. Today, since morning, all of you are hearing a different aspect of coal-based and different other areas, solar and other areas of these energy sources. But my topic is a bit different from that of the other topics. So here I would like to share my journey from 1G to 3G. So this is a biofuel which is getting produced. And when we are just talking about the different issues, since morning you have heard of the environment and this pollution and various issues. But today I would like to bring the nexus, that is a food, energy, and the environment. This nexus is very, very important, and it is playing a very important role as far as today's our environment or energy production unit is concerned. Now, since morning, we have heard of this rapid use of this fossil fuel, and we have also heard that, yes, that a gradual depletion of this particular fossil fuel, and there are different reasons thereof that, yes, and if I tell you that, yes, since morning and my previous few speakers, they have emphasized on the use of this electricity and its production. So I'm just showing one picture in 1940s Howrah station and today's Howrah station. So it is very clear that how the energy uses are increased, and it is continuously getting increasing with the name of the development and so on. So if we see the global perspectives, then if someone is asking us that I name the 5 countries, topmost countries, and within the 7 to 8 years of time, that they are the prominent and they are playing a significant role as far as the energy related issues are concerned, the 5 names which are there are US, France, China, Indonesia, and Brazil. In India's name is nowhere coming, and this is the point of our concern, and maybe that is the reason why we all are we all have assembled here to discuss the constraint that why not India. And when I'm just talking about this, I'm very much talking about the solid biofuel, liquid biofuel, and gaseous biofuel. At the same time, when we are just talking about the different uses of this bioenergy, we can clearly visualize that transportation is one of the sectors where the maximum uses of this bioenergy is required, either in the liquid or gaseous biofuel. Electricity generation and heating purposes are some of the just important areas where we can have this type of uses. Now, if we see the different the production, total production of today's that biofuel in 2018, then we can find that the production of biofuel, total world biofuel is coming. I'm talking about the liquid biofuel, and here it is coming 152.5 billion liter of biofuel which are there. And here, when I'm just showing you the data with prediction, then it is giving us a clear visual picture where I'm just showing India and its expected this visualization. I don't know whether my mouse is working or not. So this is the Indian scenario, and we can clearly see that yes, there is a huge demand and it is continuously getting increased. But if we see the total global perspectives, then we can see that we can conclude that China is expected to be the big growth market in biofuel for coming next 5 years. So this is the one important issue, that the requirement or our need is gradually getting increased with time. And if we name 5 major players of these industries who are already in this particular biofuel or bioenergy production, these are some of the names which I'm just displaying, and they are playing a significant role in the area of biofuel and especially the biodiesel market. When I'm just talking about the production part, the another part of what I have mentioned in my first slide, and mentioned that food, water, and environment. Now, where is the problem? If we see the transportation area and uses of this biofuel, we can find that the gradual emission of this emission and environmental pollution has reached to such a place that it is now the warning. It is just warning us that yes, in which way we should go and in which way we should reduce the emission. And when we are just talking about this reduction in emission pattern, we are talking about the renewable sources. And this is the pattern of reduction with the increase in the uses of the bioenergy. And that is why this bioenergy is now the hot topic, and renewables are also being talked by many of us who were not very interested to talk about this in last 2 decades. So if now from the global perspectives, if now I come to the Indian scenario, then in India, if we see the journey from first generation biofuel to third generation biofuel, then I can completely divide this first generation to third generation by a second generation, where first generation here, the controversies which we used to do earlier, now those controversies are not there with the new biofuel policies which have been framed by Government of India. And we are now converting, or we are planning to convert the sugarcane or sugarcane juice to biofuel, or bagasse to biofuel. So when we are just talking about a different lignocellulosics or waste rice to biofuel and so on, then we can have a detailed scenario of this, that first generation, which is talking about those type of raw material which can be utilized. Second generation is the lignocellulosics that can be converted to ethanol, the liquid biofuel. And third generation is the uses of more that my earlier someone was talking about the carbon positive, carbon negative, carbon neutral, different processes. And here in the research and developmental purposes, we are now trying to develop the process product which is not even carbon neutral but carbon negative. And when we talk about this carbon negative product process development, we talk about the 3G bioethanol production, 3G liquid biofuel production. So when we are just talking about the first generation, so here this broken rice to ethanol. So this it can be considered as a potable ethanol. It can be used for anything and everything. So this is some of the research activities which is being carried out at IIT Kharagpur, and we have transferred this technology for commercialization, and it is now in a large scale production of waste rice to ethanol production. Regarding the second generation biofuel production, we are taking any lignocellulosics, and those lignocellulosics are being utilized. And here the major emphasis I have given, that in my first slide I was talking about the food, water and environment. So here our major thrust is to go for the product process development which is totally free of chemicals, so that the environmental pollution, either the soil or water bodies, will not be there. It will be a totally biotechnology based product process development. And with that purview, we have started since last almost 2 decades. We have develop a process for 2G ethanol, which is completely free of chemicals, and where not a pinch of chemicals are being used. And we have filed 4 patents on this product. And this product, this process is so nice that it is just drastically reducing the amount of water uses, and this water being a biotechnology based product, and this water can be recycled back. And this is the process and the technology which we have developed at IIT Kharagpur. And entire reaction which is carried out in this particular process is carried out at room temperature, say for example 30 to 33 degrees centigrade. And the process is so fast that within 24 hours of treatment time, the raw material, the lignocellulosics, are getting converted to ethanol. And when this product process is getting developed, obviously being the industry personnel, you will be very much interested to know the cost or price of that ethanol. And I would like to tell you that must be all of you knowing that Government of India has given a fixed price for ethanol, selling price of ethanol. And our product process which we are developing, it is with the biorefinery concept, where the byproduct which are getting developed is further getting utilized for some other value added product. And when we are considering the value added product, we are naming it that it is soil to soil technology, where no that pollutants or byproduct which is getting produced is creating environmental hazard. And when we are this type of product process development, we are just getting this product in a 0 paisa when the byproduct cost is getting considered. But when we are not considering any byproduct, within 26 to 28 rupees 1 liter of ethanol is getting produced, having the purity of 99.9999%. So this is the eco-friendly process product which we have developed at IIT Kharagpur. At present, we are just going for the thrust to go for the making it more eco-friendly and where these no environmental hazards will be getting generated. And here what we have done is that clubbing this particular process with the biodiesel production. As you know that there are different types of biodiesel sources which can be considered as edible or non-edible sources, which are plenty available in our country. But what we are talking about is not the plant source, but we are going for the oleogenous microbial sources, where in the laboratory, when we have gone that the particular the lipid moieties which are getting produced is getting enhanced, and when we are just getting more the lipid, more will be the diesel, biodiesel, and more will be the cost-effective product. So here in the laboratory, we are trying to optimize the maximum lipid accumulation within the microbial sources. These microbes may be algae, these microbes may be fungi, these microbes may be bacteria, and within that we are just trying to accumulate lipid, and we are going for the our transesterification process, and we are going for the scaling up of this. And these are some of the mixed process where the oleogenous microbes are accumulating their lipid moieties within it, and we are going for this biodiesel production. After harvesting the lipid, the other carbohydrate moieties which are getting produced is transferred to the saccharifying tank for bioethanol production. And that way we are trying to go for an integrated process product development. And this way we are just addressing the ethanol as well as diesel production. And this is the current price of this biodiesel, the normal diesel petroleum products in our today's date. And that is why I'm just telling that, yes, if we can go for 5 to 20% blending of this ethanol, I think we can address, and it will be a pollution-free environment. And with this, I would like to thank you all for patiently hearing. I'll love to answer your question, if any. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. We are going to take the questions at the end when all the speakers in the panelists in this session finish their presentations. So kindly wait, man, since we are going to collate the questions at the end of the sessions. So we would now welcome Engineer Shri M.M. Dhakate, who is the Chief Engineer, RT&I of CEA New Delhi. He has more than 2.5 decades experience in the power sector, and we look forward to his very innovative perspective on this key issue.
Thank you. So my fellow speakers have covered most of the renewable targets by PMO India. The non-fossil fuel capacity will be 500 gigawatt. Earlier it was 450. It has been revised to 500 gigawatt. Everybody knows it right now. Now the 50% of the energy requirement will be from renewable energy. Now the renewable energy and non-fossil fuel energy, there are two separate terms. Okay, so it has to be taken care. Okay, so now the third important point is the maybe 30 to 35% of the vehicles will be electrical vehicles by 2030. So that has to be also accounted, as most of the consumption for charging the vehicles will be from this. So in accordance, the demand and supply scenarios for 2030 and even right now the 2047 vision document is under preparation. So we'll just concentrate about 2030 only. So government is promoting greater use of renewables, mostly through solar and wind and other biofuels, and then even non-power sector is hydrogen fuel, use of hydrogen chemicals, fertilizers, power refineries, transportation, and etc. So mostly the electrification of transport sector and use of hydrogen in mobility is very important, because it will be having major impact on the consumption of power and the requirement of the sources of power. Third one is now the comparison. So in view of the original subject is phasing out, or maybe correctly spoken, phasing down the coal thermal power plants. Now, what in view of the increased renewables, let us see by 2030 and onwards, what will be the role of hydro and gas power plants, in what percentage it will be required. So it has to be looked into from the grid perspective. So locally everybody has explained, but I will try to explain it from the grid angle and regulatory angle. Now hydro is a clear winner in this. So we'll not compare hydro in this. Now gas power plants, those will be required due to its higher amp rates, but it suffers from very low PLF, high variable cost, and moderate emission levels. This is less than coal power plants, roughly 540, averaging it out to 540 grams per unit. Now coal power plants, it's right now, earlier it used to be 90 to 100 PLF, but right in current condition it is around 50 to 60% PLF. But the advantage is low variable costs, and but the major problem is 800 to 900 gram per unit carbon emission. Now how to tackle? So I have created a list that for the carbon this coal based capacities. So it's around something more around 202 gigawatt. So if you go by the life of the projects, so government has primarily fixed up maybe 25 to 30 years, the projects will be phased down. So by the end of maybe another 20 years, it will be, all these projects in this list will be phased down. But it is not the case, because there are various alternatives available. Okay, it has to be seen from the operational angle, technological angle, and the commercial angle. Now, technological remedies. So what technology is available? CCU technology. So major the players may be knowing it captures the carbon emission from the coal-based power plants and bring the carbon levels emitted from the gas stations. So now in the previous slides we have seen that the carbon emissions from thermal power plants is in the range of 900, and from the gas stations is in the 450 range ppm. So by this technology, the thermal power plants carbon emission can be brought down to comparative to gas stations. So gas stations has, due to its higher amp rates, will be having advantages in this. But if this technology is implemented, that the thermal power plants will be brought to the level of gas power plants. So in all four aspects, the PLF, cost, merit order, and everything, that thermal power plants will be compatible. Therefore, the sustainability of the thermal power plants will be there. So will not be required the gas power plant for ramping. So ramping is another problem, but NTPC sir has already told that they have carried out the test, but that regulations may be for 3 to 4% ramping rate. But it is not possible. But I think the international technologies there are available. So there are possible that to achieve the 3 to 4% of ramping. The other remedies are through improvements through R&M, ESP upgradation, and FGD installation. But sir has clearly said that there are no vendors, and another problem is the Make in India policies. So Chinese vendors are available, but the Indian vendors, due to Make in India policies, so that is not possible. But somehow in future it will be available. Now the operational and commercial remedies. Plants, am I audible?
Yes, sir, you are.
Yeah. So operational commercial remedies. Now, the plant's geographical location is also important. Electrical connectivity with the grid, then transmission infrastructure, which is available with that. Then line flows, which are basically the line evacuation and nearby lines, nearby in the sense the connectivity wise, and reactive power control. So these plants play a very important role in controlling all this. The renewable, it will only renewable, it will not be possible. But this, let us say there is a one plant in very remote location, let us say Jammu Kashmir or somewhere, and it has very high carbon emissions, but you cannot phase it out because it will be important, because there will mostly there will be a hydro stations, and in the winter season there it will be total freeze. So for requirement, that plant will be required. So geographical location, electrical location of that plants, and number of units. Suppose one station is one single unit of maybe 600 megawatt, and there are suppose on the contrary, there are some plants, there may be 5 units of 100 megawatt. So that topology also takes care of that, whether the plant will be really available to be available, because lower units may not be that much efficient, but higher unit may be efficient. But redundancy is also very much important. Now, the another important aspect is the PLF. Earlier, maybe 10 years back or something, I have seen the PLFs of thermal power plants maybe in the range of maybe 90, more than 90%, even some crossed 100%. So tariff determination, the already determined, there is a tariff has been determined for maybe 25, that cannot be revised. But suppose some plants that I have shown in the last slide, so whichever plants have completed, now whether after completion of maybe their life maybe 25 years, so whether another type tariff determination will be there in case of some R&M or life extension or some FGD installations, everything. So the life extension, the tariff can be determined again. So that has to be kept in mind. The estimated PLF from the station in the high rich renewable scenario, so that has to be taken into consideration in terms and condition of tariff by CRC. It has not been considered, but some SCRCs have considered it. I have covered this aspect in my paper, so you can read it. So, and then similar, the long-term PPAs will also benefit the solar thermal power developers. So right now, for NTPC station, it is from allocation, and some have long-term PPAs. But I think if the PPAs are done, that will help the thermal stage. Third one is the hybrid thermal solar plants, which may be utilizing existing land. Some World Bank paper have studied. So there is a beautiful explanation how the thermal plants can be saved by installation of solar panels on the water reserve. Although it is not possible for the low capacity plants, but maybe for 230, 250, 300 megawatt and over plants per unit size, basically there are some reservoirs are there. So reservoirs can be covered, maybe 90% of the reservoir surface can be covered with thermal panels, solar panels. So the water evaporation will also reduce, and this plant will get some excuse that the power may be renewable, and it may achieve towards the RPO obligations. So that is a beautiful alternative. So World Bank it's covering that. They have listed all India thermal plants and where which potential is available for such type of hybrid thermals. Now, even that thermal plants can participate in ancillaries if they are not allowed to schedule power, but they can participate in ancillaries. The ancillary regulation has put up by CRC. They can now, due to low cost, these plants stands higher in the merit order. So basically all discoms will schedule the power first, because given a chance they will all schedule the power from thermal, maybe as a base load if it is allowed, because renewable now in current scenario can be earlier it was the most run plants, but now renewables can be curtailed. So this merit order, it should be implemented strictly. So now there is a current scenario, there is no strict implementation of this plan, but in it has to be seen from the regulatory angle, and some it should be pressurized, or some consortium should be for developed, that it may be done on some what you can say, that base load type of plants, thermal plants, because, but after all the technological development has to be taken care. So regulatory and grid scenario, everything has to be taken care, and likely that appropriately is told by previous sirs, that this thermal plants will be existing there here, so they will not be phased out. So at least 10 years they will be there, and slowly there will be some phasing out. So it is not the, basically the correct word is phasing down, not the phasing out. Thank you. With this, I complete my lecture. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. That was Mr. Dakate. And now we move on to Shaunak Dey. Shaunak Dey has done his MBA from the Calcutta Indian Institute of Management, Calcutta, and BTech Power Engineering from the National Power Training Institute under the Ministry of Power. His 11 plus years long career has given him experience in both domestic and in the international market, and endowed him with an end-to-end understanding of power projects and operations. Currently, he is he's an associate vice president, commercial strategy and regulatory affairs at Jindal India Thermal Power Limited. We welcome Mr. Shaunak Dey.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for this great introduction. I really appreciate that. First of all, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I hope that everybody is safe and healthy. I am elated to be a part of this discussion with the eminent speakers out there. So as the previous speakers all have spoken about flexible utilization of the thermal power plants, not only the flexible utilization of the power plants is necessary, but also along with that, competitiveness has to be there. The economics should work out so that we are, as a thermal power generators, be competitive enough to supply electricity in the Indian power grid. So in this regard, there has been a recent development in the Indian power sector where known as market-based economic dispatch, which is going to be implemented from April 2022. And if implemented, this will be a paradigm shift in the power markets, or specifically the power sector and for the thermal power plant. So with this, I would like to have a presentation here. Is my screen visible to everybody?
Yes, yes, it is.
Okay, so my presentation specifically covers just a second. Yeah, I am covering 5 aspects under this market-based economic dispatch. First of all, we'll see the thermal power generation overview in the India. Next is the current scheduling mechanism done by the DISCOMs under security constraint economic dispatch mechanism. Third, we will understand how the power market operates, or the power exchanges, to be specific about it. And fourth, the concept of market-based economic dispatch. And the last, that is the implementation of MBED concept. So let us go through the thermal generation overview in the country right now as on 2021. So I have tried to cover segregated the government plants such as NTPC and the state gencos, the private players such as independent power producers, as well as the private players who are based on imported coal. So as on date, the total installed capacity in the country is 205 gigawatts of the thermal generation, out of which the tied up long-term PPAs with the DISCOMs are around 181 gigawatts, and the medium-term PPAs are around 2.5 gigawatts, and 22 gigawatts of power are currently not tied up under any long-term or medium-term agreements. So that is this power generally is traded in the exchange, and in the power exchange, such as in Indian Energy Exchange, as well as the Power Exchange of India Limited. Next, moving on to the concept of self-scheduling of DISCOMs under security constraint economic dispatch, which is currently prevalent in India. So what's happening right now is that I will try to illustrate with an example. First, I'll give you the concept. What's happening right now is that individual states have their long-term power purchase agreements with certain GENCOs or the generating companies. So, and they are scheduling their power based on the merit order dispatches from those set of power generating companies which they have their long-term agreements, but they are not having access to the other generating companies outside the state or outside their long-term agreements, which may be economic or maybe having low cost of generation. So this is how we can we just understand the current scenario. So in my left and right, there are two states, for example, I have taken. So let us say that DISCOM 1 has a demand of 70 megawatts in state 1, and DISCOM 2 has a requirement of 100 megawatts in state 2, and there are 4 generators in state 1 of each 25 megawatt of declared capacity, with a different variable cost starting from 1, 2, 3, and 4 per unit. Vis-a-vis in state 2, we have 4 generators of 40 megawatt capacity each, and they have their variable costs from ranging from 1.5 to 2.5 and 3 per unit. So in state 1, where the supply is 100 megawatts and the demand is 70 megawatts, currently what DISCOMs are doing is that they are scheduling the stations based on the merit order dispatch or the variable costs. So they will schedule with the least cost. Maximum schedule will be given to the least cost generator who have the lowest variable costs, and then a bucket filling method will be followed. But here is a catch, or criteria is there, that you have to give a technical minimum schedule even if the generator has a high variable cost. So in the table in the left hand side, we can see that generator 1 is the least cost, generator 2 is the second least, and accordingly. So in the schedule as per SCD, the generator 1 and 2 gets the full schedule as per the declared capacity, but generator 3 and 4 gets the technical minimum. Whereas in state 2, where the demand from the DISCOM is 100 megawatts and the supply is 160 megawatts, the generator 5, which is the least cost generators, gets the full schedule. But generator 6, which is the second least cost generator of with variable cost of 2 per unit, rupees 2 per unit, it does not get the full schedule. It only gets 20 megawatts of schedule out of 40 megawatt in a 15-minute time block. Whereas generator 7 and 8, both being the high cost generators in terms of variable cost, they get the technical minimum schedule. So the total DISCOM payout of DISCOM 1 and 2 cumulatively comes out to be, just for an example, it comes out to be 87,250 rupees in a particular 15-minute time block of a day of 96 time blocks. Now let us consider a scenario where we have a pooling of resources, and DISCOM 1 and DISCOM 2 both cumulatively have a demand of 170 megawatts, and the total generation pool that we cumulatively together has this supply provisions. So under this scenario, what happens is that the total demand from the DISCOMs is 170, whereas the supply from generators is 260 megawatt. Now, in case of SCED mechanism, as you can see in this, as the previous slide I have shown, the total DISCOM payout becomes 87,250. But if we consider that there is no technical minimum constraint, then in that case, only the least cost generators will get the total schedule, and the high cost generators will get no schedule. Under this case, there is a straight away savings of 8,500 rupees in a particular time block of 15 minutes. So this is the concept that that MBED is all about. It shows that right now, with the current mechanism of individual state-wise SCD mechanism of merit order dispatch, the cost to the DISCOMs are high compared to if there is no technical minimum and pooling of resources. So that means that the cost of electricity will go down if this no technical minimum pooling is rolled out, and as well as the cost of electricity to the industrial consumers as well as the retail consumers will go down. So this is the overview of the MBED mechanism. So how this can be implemented? To understand that, let us see how the power market or the power exchange operates in India. To illustrate that, I have just taken up an illustration. So let us say that the generation port, there are 4 generators who are interested in selling in exchange, and there are 2 DISCOMs who are interested in buying from exchange. So in that scenario, let us, for generator 1, who is interested in selling 200 megawatts of power with a minimum selling price of rupees 2 per unit. That is, it is ready to sell 200 megawatts with minimum 2 or more than 2 rupees per unit. Similarly, for generator 2 and 3, who are offering 100 megawatts of power at a rate of minimum 3 rupees per unit, and generator 4, who is offering 100 megawatts of power at minimum 4 rupees per unit. Vis-a-vis in the buy side, if we see Discom 1 is interested in buying 100 megawatts of power with maximum price that they can pay is 3 rupees per unit. Whereas in case of Discom 2, which is having a demand of 300 megawatts, is ready to pay maximum 4 rupees. So if we plot the supply and demand table, we can see that the equilibrium is reached at 400 megawatts, where the buy side and the sell side matches, as well as the price is discovered. So this is a very important criteria. The volume that is cleared under this algorithm is known as market clearing volume, and the price discovered under this mechanism is known as market clearing price. So this is how power exchanges operates. They put the supply curve and the demand curve, and the intersection point is the point where the market clearing volume and the market clearing price is discovered in the exchange. So now let us see what is the concept of market-based economic dispatch. So under this market-based economic dispatch, the concept of one nation, one grid, one frequency, and one price. So we have already achieved one nation, one grid, one frequency, but one price is yet to be achieved because different states have different tie-ups, long-term tie-ups with different generators. So the prices are different from state to state. So Ministry of Power is aiming towards that one price in all India basis. So that's how this MBED concept is floated, and it is going to be implemented in a phased manner from April 2020. Power exchange, and based on the supply demand curve that is generated, the intersection point is known as the market clearing price and the market clearing volumes. Under this scenario, the market clearing price comes out to be rupees 2.5 per unit, and the market clearing volume is 170 megawatts. Now let us see how the scheduling will be happening as per merit order dispatch. So in this, we can see that initially I have plotted the declared capacities, the fixed cost, the variable costs, and their by the cell bids of generators. So generator 1 is interested in selling anything above 1 rupee per unit. So it is also ready to sell at 1.5, 2.5, 2, 3, 3.5, such like that. So all the 8 generators have been plotted like this, and the market clearing prices, just a second. Market clearing price is 2.5. Market clearing price is covered in the exchange. So the fixed cost of the generator 1 was 1.5 under long-term agreement, and the variable cost was rupees 1 per unit. But in the market clearing price, it gets a price of 2.5. So the difference of the variable cost of 1 and 2.5 is 1.5 rupees. So this 1.5 rupees that the generator 1 is receiving in excess will be offset by the fixed cost payment that was supposed to be done by the Discom. So that way this adjustment of payments will be done, and ultimately for each generator these adjustments will be done based on their fixed cost is any case to be paid because it is based on the declared capacity. The variable cost is only paid based on your generation or the schedule that you get. So based on these adjustments, there is no change in the long-term agreement. The only change is that how competitive you are to get a schedule in the by the Discom. So if you are competitive enough and you are quoting below the market clearing price or at par with the market clearing price, then you will get schedule, otherwise not. So in that case, we can see that as per the previous example, under the SCED mechanism, existing SCED mechanism and the proposed MBED mechanism, there is a difference of 8,500 in a particular time block. So clearly there is a benefit to the Discoms as well as to the customers and the consumers, retail as well as industrial consumers. So that's why MOP has taken, and this is very prevalent in the Nordic region and the European markets and the US markets, where all this type of arrangement is there, and there is no certain long-term agreements. All players, the generators as well as the Discoms, participate in the power exchanges, and the price is discovered, and accordingly the schedules are got. So the very important point in this is that And the important perspective from WBPDCL or the state GenCos is that you have to be competitive. As and when the MBED is launched, you will not be entitled. The competition will be fierce because you will be competing with NTPC stations, the private players, the state GenCos in terms of your variable cost. So you have to be very, very competitive in order to get the schedules. If you don't get the schedules, you will only be paid for the fixed cost and no variable cost will be paid to you. So that is a direct hit to the top line of the companies. It is very important to be competitive and start bucking up your belts and working on that. So in terms of the implementation of the MBED, in the first phase, all the interstate generating stations have to participate from 1st April 2022. What do I mean by interstate generating stations is that any power plant who have in any particular state who have a PPA with a different state, then it is termed as an interstate generating stations. So all the fleet of NTPC stations as well as the private generating companies will be participating in the first phase, which starts from April 2022. And depending upon the challenges and the bottlenecks or the initial hiccups experiences we will get, the phase 2 will be rolled up from 1st April 2023, where the state generating companies will also be forced to participate under this mechanism. So this is a paradigm shift in the power sector that is coming, and I think we should all be ready for this in terms of competitiveness and economics of the cost of power. With this, I end my presentation. As Madam said, we'll take the question and answers in the later on stage. Thank you very much for your patient hearing, and I really appreciate for giving the opportunity to share my knowledge in this forum. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Shonok Dey. And now we move on to our last presentation, which would be by Engineer Joy Chakraborty, an electrical engineer from IIEST, and also he has done his MBA from Burdwan University, but later on he concentrated on renewable energy, and he has studied in the University of Roorkee, which is now IIT Roorkee, and from ISIMOD Kathmandu and USAID Washington. He has been involved in the installation of mini and micro hydro power projects and plants with various capacities in our very own Darjeeling Hills. And he has done the same with solar photovoltaic, solar thermal, biomass, and wind energy. So we look forward to his presentation. As you all know that the questions have been, you would find the questions in the chat. Some of the questions are directed to specific persons. What we can do, since time is very short, you can in fact start replying in the chat itself that what would be your take on the answers. So the questions are available in the chat, so you can start typing the answers where the questions are directed to specific persons. That would shorten our interactive time, as we are really behind schedule. Right now, we are awaiting Engineer Joy Chakraborty, who would be joining us digitally anytime now. And there is also another interesting thing, slightly outside the purview of our seminar, which is a fun thing, actually. We are going to do a lucky draw for the participants, and this is in progress. The participants have all registered, and we would be proceeding with the lucky draw very soon. Right now, we are trying to connect with Mr. Joy Chakraborty. Mr. Joy Chakraborty would be joining us shortly. While we are waiting for Mr. Joy Chakraborty, one possibility is that we can do the lucky draw as we are waiting for Mr. Joy Chakraborty. And the other option is that all of you who have, obviously you have access to your chat messengers, so you can start answering the questions. Mr. Joy Chakraborty is with us now, I believe. Yes,
hello,
we are awaiting you.
Am I audible now?
Absolutely audible.
Thank you,
and
ma'am.
visible.
Okay, so from very morning today, we have discussed different aspects of our power sector, especially with thermal and then renewable. In this particular juncture, at the end of this session, I want to share some figures, facts, and definitely based on these figures and facts, there expect some observations. First, I request the people who are listening this program online that say 25 years before, when the economic reform started in this country under the Prime Ministership of Mr. Narasimha Rao and then Finance Minister Dr. Manmohan Singh, we can recollect then it was a case of independent power producers, IPP. So IPP, with this, the private players took entry into the thermal power generation in this country. For launching this program of IPP, then our economists, our planners, the Planning Commission, they had the argument that we have to connect all households of this country, and so our requirement of electricity will be enhanced tremendously. Their projected and their predicted figure was 6 lakh megawatt installation by 2010. We all are aware that what finally happened with these IPP projects, and now with end up to 2021, we have not crossed 4 lakh megawatt installed capacity altogether cumulatively. This is one story. Another story, during the UPA 2 under Dr. Manmohan Singh's Prime Ministership, we had a debate on nuclear power. Then argument was almost same because the Rajiv Gandhi Gramin Vidyutikaran Yojana program was on. It has the same objective to connect all households of this country to the grid for 24/7 and 365 days in a year. With this program, it was the argument that we have to have more and more nuclear power stations so that we can generate more energy and can meet the enhanced demand due to the rapid electrification of unelectrified areas. That was a serious debate, and the opposition, they had the argument that through this agreement, our sovereignty will be sold. Friends, after 2010 and now 2022, I think there is no new nuclear power station in this country in the last 10, 20, 12 years. And our sovereignty is again not sold. So point is that one point I have shared regarding IPPs, the argument was a 6 lakh megawatt installation is required. A second, the more nuclear power plants under the 123 agreement with the US. Now at the end of this 2020, 2021, the debate has come, the coal versus renewable and DISCOM with solar. These two are perpetuating debates now. DISCOM say that more penetration of solar, especially rooftop solar, it hinders their financial, their commercial interest, and it reduces their revenue from prime customers. This is their argument. On another side, renewable people, they say that DISCOM has almost 20 to 25% of ATC loss average in this country, whereas the solar power they avail from the rooftop as surplus to their grid at the point of generation. So this loss is not there. Second, this surplus power is their free power because they have not invested. DISCOM has not invested for such power plants, which the power producers produce, and the surplus the DISCOM gets. So there are many arguments, but the debate is on. Another debate that phasing out of coal. Friends, in this juncture, we have some study with some other engineers, especially with engineer Shreya Karmakar from IIT Dhanbad, that we have studied that what are the figures contributing to our energy mix now. And say now 69% of our installation comes from thermal, and it corresponds to 71% of our energy generation. 69, 71. For large hydro, it is 11%, that is our installed capacity. And it contributes again 11% for our energy generation. Comes renewable with solar and wind. It is 19% of our total installed capacity, and it contributes 9%. 19 versus 9. For large hydro, 11 versus 11. For thermal, 69 versus 71. So the energy mix is concerned. For solar and wind, miles to go to compete with coal. The figures and facts as on that it said. I want to share with another important aspect that with the very objective of changing our energy mix in the name of climate change and others, we are very rapidly entering into an era when the power producers in this country will be the private players. Means now, if you compare the figures of our thermal and large hydro, almost for thermal 60-62% of our total thermal installation owns by state and central government companies. Whereas for large hydro, it is 92%, 92% plus. It is owned by state and central government organizations and departments. For wind and solar is concerned, the scenario is quite interesting. Here, 95% plus capacity is owned by private players. So for thermal, it is 60-62%. For large hydro, it is 90-92% owned by government. And for renewable, other than large hydro, mostly solar and wind, it is 95% owned by private players. So with the change of energy mix pattern means our reducing dependency on coal and enhancing the dependency on renewable energy, especially wind and solar, our country is moving to the scenario when the power plants, when the power producers, and this will be controlled by our private players. So this very perspective means this is a very important angle, I think, to share, because technologies are there. Historically, we know that from diesel, we started producing power and supplying to the people, then comes coal. Maybe in future, it will be renewable. So it is not that from a single source, from very beginning of civilization, electricity producing starts and it continues. It has changed and it will change. The change will keep on. Point is that how the question of supplying electricity to the people in environment friendly and in affordable cost, these can be achieved. Definitely with environment point, climate mitigation is involved, and with the cost point, that is the affordability point, and the success India has achieved, that the 100% households have been connected to the grid. So if this success is to be continued, our people must have the capability to pay their electricity bill at the end of the billing cycle. So until and unless it is ensured, our every exercise means in our energy mix, we may enhance the renewable penetration, but end of the day, we have to collect the money from the consumer who have to pay their bills, and the financial ability will permit or make them the point to challenge that. It's very pertaining in the COVID period when lots of people are losing their employment and their income sources reducing. So with this very few words, the end speaker, I request all the people and organizers that please look this point also into consideration with all other important points that you consider and what you have discussed. The ownership, very beginning, our ownership was, say for coal, it was free at the beginning of civilization. The water from river, it was free. The sunlight, it was free. Now nothing is free. We know the cost of coal. What is the cost of coal? The river sources, the major sources of water, it is used for hydroelectricity, used for other commercial and industrial purposes. Say it's a sunlight. Say you have a residence in Kolkata city. You want to have a rooftop power plant at your roof, but you can't. Because in your area, say Discom is not pushing this program. Say in your area, regulation doesn't permit. So it is again a question of restriction. So with these boundaries, one side it is regulation, another side it is climate change, environment, air pollution related issues, one side the ownership arrangement, and then the cost, that affordability with which the people has to afford this electricity. So with these few words, many thanks to Engineers Welfare Forum for organizing this program with the sorts that the COVID restrictions, transport disruption and others, they have organized so nicely. And to my sincere gratitude to the people who have organized this research and other accumulation of data and findings, especially Engineer Seha Kormokar, who has done this wonderful job and given the food for thought for this type of observations. Thanks to all.
Thank you so much. That was Engineer Joy Chakraborty, Divisional Engineer of West Bengal Renewable Energy Development Authority. Thank you so much for making the conditionality of this system of transfer or integration of renewable energy so very clear. And before we take the questions, we would do the lucky draw. The lucky draw for the participants, we have let our computers decide the winner of the lucky draw. So can we have a look? Lucky draw winner amongst all the participants is Mr. Oshim Shaha. Mr. Oshim Shaha, who is one of the many participants of our 10th National Seminar, today was his lucky day and he has won the lucky draw. As also Deepanita Bhattacharya, Enzamul Haq Mullik, Debopriya Borai, or is it Boral? Mr. Mridul, Mr. Shamdeep Roy, Oliva Shah, Shomi Roy, Shundip Kumar Mahato, Bhaskar Ghosh, Moumita Jana, Ojoy Rana, Shubhro Sen, Inder Rajdeva, Sanjoy Shamanto, Saurabh Ghosh, Om Prakash Maiti, Milton Roy, quite a lot of winners, Shubham Agarwal, Shubhankar Chakraborty, Shubhendu Bhuiya, Shubhasree Mondol, Onindo Ghotok, Bapai Sarkar, Saroj Kumar Shah, Manoj Kumar, Raj Shah Kashyap, and that's it. So lots of winners, lots of fun for them. And now we would like to take on the questions. Many of these questions have already been answered. So if there are any remaining one, for instance, there was a question from Mr. Shudipto De. It was addressed to Mr. Snehesh Banerjee. Will the economy of coal-based power generation be acceptable at a very low load? Should we switch over to a larger number of smaller capacity units in future coal-based power plants? He wanted Mr. Snehesh Banerjee to answer that. Mr. Snehesh Banerjee.
Yes, thank you for the questions. But what I just communicating that lower dimensions, lower capacity of installing thermal power plants is not the solutions. Solution is to flexibilize the existing higher capacity plants at a solar peak hours. That means when the solar will generate at the maximum, then we have to come down at a minimum level. And when solar energy recedes in the evening, then we have to ramp up again and to come up to the maximum level. So that is why the lower dimensions capacity wise is not the solutions. I
so
hope
the quantity is not the solution, quality time is the solution.
And
thank
flexibilizations of the units is the solutions. Flexibilize the unit is the only solution.
Thank you, we get your point, absolutely. This was once again a question from Mr. Chirantan Gupta. Why can we not implement machine learning or artificial intelligence based solutions like spatiotemporal graph, convolutional networks to forecast traffic and load, given that I have seen ample research papers, conference or journal papers from China who are using these in the energy sector. Mr. Chirantan Gupta is a geospatial scientist at the Royal Dutch Shell in Chennai. So he wants Dr. Rintu Banerjee to answer this question. Dr. Rintu Banerjee, the use of artificial intelligence.
I have already replied.
You have already replied, right?
Yes, I have already replied to him. Yes.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Right. So many of the questions have already been answered by the relevant person. Mr. Gupta to Mr. Takate, how can we leverage renewable energy, especially electric vehicles charging network optimization and deployment in India, given the current situation of India is very bleak? He is, as he has already introduced himself, he is a geospatial scientist, and he's saying that other countries like China, UK, the Netherlands, Germany have been doing it. So the answer to that from Mr. M.M. Takate, unless you have already answered it.
It has been answered, but I will still reply that India, it is on the same lines, the electric charging infrastructure for electric vehicles is from a different kind of sources, maybe domestic, maybe existing connections, domestic commercial, in the cinema halls, on petrol pumps, from renewables only. It is all sort of connections are being given. So it is not only renewable, but it is mix of all. So it is given to the developers to choose what type of connections types they give.
Right. So in fact, most of the questions have been answered. So we'll just take a last question. And the last question is, as once again from Mr. Chirantan Gupta, who he is the most prolific, question asker. As we were talking about competence, what is your idea about taking into context the energy giants across the globe, whether they can leverage upon the energy load, especially how can the grid be supported for any renewable energy? How can it be made affordable? Also, we have a very low data available for any such analysis. So all these queries directed to Mr. Shonokde. Mr. Shonokde.
Yeah, thank you for the question. First of all, the renewables integration is a very challenging in nature because of its variable in nature. So the variability of renewables in the grid has forced the thermal power plants for flexible utilization, and as shared by the previous speaker from NTPC, that how we can leverage in terms of flexible utilization of thermal power plants. And in terms of the economics, this is one aspect, how to adjust the renewables. This is the technical part. Now the commercial part is that you must also be competitive in nature in order to sell your electricity, because it is a commodity product. There is no differentiation aspect in this regard of electricity, because whether it is coming from WBPDCL or Maharashtra State Genco, there is no differentiation. So you must be competitive enough to sell that electricity. So that aspect I tried to cover in terms of the regulations that are coming in. So I think that grid stability part is not and so much of issue in terms of intermittency if we go through the flexible utilization of thermal power plants. And to be competitive to sell the electricity, that is also an important aspect that should be taken care apart from the technical aspect, so that we are competitive enough in terms of prices, and we don't hit our top line and bottom line in that aspect. So this is how I perceive things at this point of time. Thank you.
Right. So we'll take one last question, and this is going to be the last question. This is from Om Prakash Maiti. Once again, there is this China-India competitiveness in this question. China is a leader in making solar plates. Why is India falling behind? Particularly, Om Prakash Maiti points out that India has a desert to boast of, and obviously then why not? And this question is directed to Mr. Joy Chakraborty. The production of solar plate, China leads, India falls behind, despite India having a desert.
Yeah, hello, I'm audible?
Yes.
The point is that it is not the only question of availability of natural resources like sand or silica in India. It was an opportunity which we have missed 25 years before, because the technology comes from US and Europe. Raw material comes from US and Europe. China is the production hub, and they produce it at their own terms. Definitely, it is not the issue of technology solely. Other economic issues, political economy, these are concerned. But in this particular juncture of this question, one point I want to share, that now the chance has come again to India. That is EV revolution. We are at the threshold of EV revolution, electric vehicle across the world. Till now, we are not producing the motor, we are not producing the battery. But in 2020, the government of India has already introduced policy which is linked with your performance and production-based incentive, with which our producers have already started planning to produce these things, means the motor here and the battery improvised here. All the big players, you have already noticed that the Adanis, Ambanis, they have already entered into this market with this particular manufacturing objective. So now there is an opportunity that these manufacturing, and again coupling it with the definitely IoT-based applications, coupling it with the solar photovoltaic charging, we have the scope which we have missed 25 years ago. We have the scope under Make in India program now, that we can make it viable, and then only the demand, the domestic demand for solar cells indigenously to be manufactured here can be in a position we can make it competitive with China. This is the very submission.
Thank you so much. Thank you. So now that the ball is once again in our court, let's prove that we are big players. Thank you. With that, we end the interactive session, and in fact, the final 10th seminar would also come to a final end, and the vote of thanks would be proposed by Mr. Devopriyo Mitra, President, Engineers Welfare Forum, West Bengal Power Development Corporation Limited. With the vote of thanks by our President, Mr. Devopriyo Mitra, we close the 10th seminar.
Am I audible, ma'am?
Yes.
Yes. Good afternoon and Happy New Year to all. Our most valued invited guests, and most importantly, our members of the engineering WBPDCL and audience. I am grateful that we end this seminar by giving vote of thanks on the occasion of today's seminar. Environment, our present Earth reminds us to strengthen the world and ensure that nature is cost. It throws light on the causes which are causing serious harm to our environment. To protect environment of our future generation and to prevent pollutants to be harmed. Renewable energy is the new energy destination for today's or tomorrow. We have to be prepared, discussed from now. All previous speakers have given utmost importance to prevent environment. Thanks for their valuable speech. I, on behalf of Engineers Welfare Forum, would like to extend hearty vote of thanks to entire people who contributed their valuable time today for making efforts to make this seminar successful. A big thank you to all support staff who supervised and took care of all arrangement for today's seminar. I am intensely happy to see that such a sincere attitude of all people whose involvement motivated all other people to participate in order to save. Stay safe. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So with that, we come to the end of the 10th seminar by the Engineers Welfare Forum of West Bengal Power Development Corporation Limited. And we look forward to next year. Meanwhile, all of you stay safe, maintain all the COVID protocols, and we do hope that next time we would be having a physical seminar. Thank you so much.